Roll call, please.
Orstein,
Yes.
Kelly,
Here.
Meggs, here, Scylla, here, Gaffney.
Here. Please join me in the pledge of allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Item 2, adjourn to closed session. Reconvene the Willis Valley Sanitary District, reconvene to open session. We have nothing to report on the closed session. Item 6 is approval of agenda. And what I propose is that we have Mark introduce himself in item 7, but that we move,
Item 7 is open.
yeah,
Oh,
he's
okay.
not on the agenda. We do Hayden's group next, and then Iris. So we move, we need to move 11 right after the open vote,
Okay.
and then 13 and 14 right after 11.
Okay. I would so move. Approve the agenda with those changes?
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. So, open time for public, and you can introduce yourself.
Okay, thanks. So Mark Hildebrand with Hildebrand Consulting, recently selected by staff and by the committee to conduct your sewer rate study. So the process has begun. I submitted my data request last week, and so we'll start collecting that data, and we'll be reporting back to you as we make progress, and looking forward to working together. This is right, I mean, I'm in Oakland, but it's nice to have a project that feels very local compared to flying to SoCal or different places.
So we can call you over at like 7 o'clock.
Anytime you want. Yeah, this is a pleasure to be able to.
Did you work for Stantec?
I did.
Oh, you did, yeah, because I saw some of your reports. Were from Stantec.
Yeah, right. So I started my own firm about 6 months ago.
Excellent. And you're going to be staffing the project.
I will, yeah. I'm also teamed with Bob Reed, who is a sole proprietor as well. He's out of Sacramento, and he's done quite a bit of work around here, most recently with Telepites District.
Any questions of the board? Thank you for coming by and for working with you. We've got a lot of ideas.
Do you have
Yeah, we do.
a business card,
I do.
chance? That would be awesome.
If you don't mind, I'll stick around for a few minutes to see how things are done around here.
Well, the next item is agenda item 11, discussion and direction on potential site analysis relating to the facilities needs. Recommend you take these things out.
No, but he said you haven't had last time, which you probably have.
She looked at your contract.
We made it again.
And Mark, you're assuming that I
Kept the car.
kept the
We
card.
can't. Well, if you want another rookie card, you know.
I think I have it.
I'll
He's probably the one
Oh, I
guy.
do have.
You will call
I
him.
have it. I didn't throw yours out.
Excellent. Appreciate it.
I will suggest you call it.
Thanks for coming.
Oh,
Yeah, sure thing.
Oh, there we go. Oh, it's going to be moving. Awesome. All right, cool.
Is this over here? Yes,
Well, that's going to turn off everything.
That'll turn off all the lights.
If that's what you want. No. No, because I'm going to look here too.
oh, yeah.
That's fine. The board is closed.
I think if you're asking, Tom, I'll just introduce Hayden Ungaro with the Newmore Knight.
Yeah, we did change our name.
Did change.
It's okay to
Yeah.
have that confusion.
Okay,
This is
thank
not
you
a
for that.
consideration.
Right.
And your associate, Joe McCallum. Nice to have you both here.
Thank you.
Yeah, so the board's direction at a recent meeting was to retain services at Hayden to do some exploration of available properties within
the district service area or somewhere close by the service area, such as where we are here at Kerner, which is just outside the service area but has great access. So we looked at the inventory, came up with a couple of potential sites for discussion and direction by the board. This might be a good time to remind the board that we're not looking at any specific site. We're not talking about property negotiations at this point in the discussion at all. We want to make sure that actually we're, reserving our position of negotiation a little bit closer to our chest. Those types of conversations that would be held in closed session. So this is really just how would that particular site fit with the needs of the district? Pros, cons, and again, general discussion and direction.
And if we were going to pick a site for you to negotiate, you probably want to do that in a closed session.
Yes.
Yeah, so thank you. To be clear on what we're looking at here, when I first met with Felicia, I was stating the obvious, which the requirement involves looking at things that may not be available just to find something with 20,000 feet or so, with storage, with office, with parking. That's a tall order. So what you are seeing are not necessarily properties for sale. In almost every case, they're not for sale. Okay, but they are sites that I think serve as they could work. I have relationships with many of these owners and could go to them if it's a fit, but it can help us get feedback to further define what areas you want to look at. You may say, Corte Madera is too far south. I'm just throwing that out. Okay, well, let's just keep that off the table. Or, there's a property that is going to be coming to market that Comcast owns, and you may say, you know what? We don't want to have Comcast there. What else is available on Anderson Drive? And then we'll do a deep dive into that. And then I do think, just for your negotiating position, we have to be careful not to just throw out every site in a public forum. So you guys can address that later. This is really just, here's some sites that could fit the requirement. Here's some different areas, and how do we define it even further? So with that,
excuse me 1 second.
Yeah.
Would it make any sense for you to give us a ballpark of what you think these properties might be worth as we're
Yes.
going? Okay.
Now, I have another question too. We had a study done, and the area that we needed for office, and then the area for parking. We did, and I can't remember.
I can remind the board of that. So it's approximately 20,000 square feet of office space, and then another 20,000 square feet of land.
Okay, so like, that's just under an acre.
Right.
Okay.
For a single story building, yeah.
Yeah, okay, good. And so,
yeah, and I'm not used to a public setting, so if I throw out a price, what I don't want, does this go out to the universe?
Yes.
No, it's posted on the website, and everybody that goes to watch sanitation meetings would see it.
Yes, it's
It'll be
publicly
available.
Yes.
Being video.
We're being
Well, I don't want to throw out a price and have an owner say, what did you come up with? Do you understand what I'm saying?
we do.
Yeah, we can negotiate later. Just,
No, but
places like this cost in the
Well,
ballpark.
maybe you shouldn't.
I think that would be better.
Okay, all right.
For now, just because,
We're in public session.
we're in public
Okay,
session.
fine.
And it's going to be the very minimum they would start at.
No, that's true.
But
Yeah.
I don't know. These are things I haven't.
No, I know,
Owners,
But if they saw
hear it, then they're going to go, well, that's the minimum.
yeah. Okay, all right, here we go. So we explored options with a southern boundary of Corte Madera, and we stopped in central Santa Fe. We discussed maybe some options up in the North Santa Fe area, and it was, I think, deemed at this point that let's focus in this geographic area. So if we go to the first site, This is a site that I thought was interesting because it has an area that's undeveloped with some PG&E lines. It has been used for parking. Hertz is a tenant there, and I don't know the lease situation, but it could be a site that has available land to park trucks, that has buildings comprising approximately what you need, and it's in your district. This, just based on geography, I would say, would be a higher priced option because of its location in Corte Madera right off the freeway than maybe some of the other options that we'll look at further north. So what I can say is if you are looking in the Corte Madera area, I would say an office building, just traditional without warehouse, but if you're looking at office buildings, you could be in the $400 to $500 per square foot range for traditional office. This is not that. This has some warehouse, but again, if we're just looking for an office building in Corte Madera, that could be a ballpark, and it could go even higher depending on the quality.
Just as a point of information, Hayden, the Corte Madera site is actually outside of the district's strict service area boundaries.
Okay.
And that particular site would be served by Sanitary District Number 2, which is a neighboring agency of ours. And in fact, I think Steve just mentioned, I wasn't aware of it, but Stephen, you may also know, that corner of San Clemente and Paradise Drive is actually a pump station facility for SD2.
That's the Paradise Pump.
That's the Paradise Pump.
Okay.
Well, they can start paying us to fix it.
Where is it?
And we consolidate, you know.
I don't know.
Yes, I'm not gonna tell you that.
Oh, it's a pump station.
Is it Santu that Roy Sewer Services basically
Yes.
services there? And so who services their pump station? Same?
CMSA.
Where's the pump station exactly?
I believe it's that corner,
That's
just
right where
Paradise
Paradise
and
Drive is?
Clemente.
Yeah,
That's everything.
Thanks, Stephen.
right there. Here, this guy.
That's gigantic.
Yes.
Pump station. Okay.
So if we travel north, this is, as we were discussing, the old Tamil Pius Theater building.
Yep.
The theater used to be back in this area here.
Hayden, isn't that left building the new Stapleton Dance Center, which moved?
That is right over here.
That's the old one, isn't it?
No, the old one is even further.
Okay, okay.
They moved into the warehouse building next to the Java hub.
Okay.
Detour.
Yeah.
What is that secondary building now? What is it?
This is 14 through 20 Greenfield Avenue. It's a showroom warehouse type building with a framing store and a few other tenants.
And you're saying the theater was back in the vacant area? No, it's that front.
No, it's right
But
there.
it's stretched back.
The theater is
once upon a
here.
time.
The-
Oh, so they've actually reduced?
Does that include the gym?
Theater's not open.
Does it include the gym?
It does not include the gym, no.
And then Chinese food is available.
Yes.
That's excellent. The Ross police are always there at that place.
Anywhere across.
So, the reason this is on the list is there's roughly the parking that's needed now. There's 41 spaces, but there's a garden patio area that can be reclaimed for parking. There's a biofuel pump waste area that can be reclaimed for parking. That area could be fenced, and so what are we doing is strike parking versus just it's your lot and your parallel parking and putting trucks in at the night and people don't get in and out. You might be able to fit all your vehicles, say, in this area and then have the other parking for employees as an idea. So you've got roughly 7,000 feet. That used to be San Anselmo Tire and Brake years ago when I grew up. And so it's an open truss, beautiful warehouse with had some roll-up doors so that could house some of the warehouse storage. And then you've got about 11,000 feet of office. existing. That is in the district. So, there's different access points too, I think, which is important, so you can get into, off of Greenfield. And Greenfield Avenue has a lot of parking, that's public parking, that's not counted.
And the property is also accessed by Smith Lane, which comes behind the adjacent property, and then dumps out one way to Bank Street below here.
If we were to go to an area, not necessarily like this, if I'm not incorrect, there's been difficulties getting projects approved there with neighbors who are dead set against anything changing. I mean, parking is difficult there, and I know the neighbors in that area have given grief to these in the past.
They have, but I don't know that what you'd be doing, maybe the vehicle parking would be looked at a certain way, but you'd be working within existing structures that have a historical industrial use, so they could object, but I think, you know, we'd have to work with the town.
They object to that area.
Your photo shows more space than our handout, and includes this back parking lot.
So for what's on the agenda, there was a mix-up where we have provided a more updated package, which is projected on the screen, but I believe did not make it into your agenda.
Okay, so you're looking at an older version that's been updated.
Yeah,
And the lot size
and
is now what?
the lot size, it's
31,000.
almost, yeah, so that version omitted part of the parking
I know.
area.
I'm trying to update this one.
Right.
Okay,
Okay, good.
that's it, okay.
This is an area that's in Santa Fe with pretty good freeway access. There's a single tenant there, Pace Supply. It's on the list just because it's got 22,000 feet. It may be,
Last one.
it may be 34 parking places. It's a pretty tight lot. My guess is this may be too small to fit trucks and everything, but, you know,
But there's a baseball
again,
stadium across the street.
It used to be a bakery.
I think Davidson.
There's Davidson and the elementary school that's on the same site right here, and then Davidson Middle School's right over there.
What happened to Kilpatrick's Bakery years ago?
There.
Years ago.
Okay.
It was.
Oh, yeah, it was.
Yeah,
You're right.
been here a long time.
Okay. And again, just, I think for what would be helpful is, you know, we could say, well, that's too small, but we love that area. What's going on with these buildings? You know, call the owner, see what's going on. So that's part of the
But
process
you know,
here.
if the area is 44,000 feet square, that's plenty, isn't it? 20,000 building and 20,000?
Yeah, but you've got 34 parking places, but again, that's striped spots, but you're right. There may be enough area where you don't care that there's 34 sites because you're going to bring in these big trucks and fill in spaces and
And
it's
we're going to
just...
stripe them ourselves.
Yeah, correct. Okay, next up. This was an assemblage that Sutter Hospital purchased years ago. They were going to build a hospital. A local individual bought this, you see, for about $30 million, which was less than what Sutter paid by quite a bit. Sutter paid more than that just for the old Marin Square and then assembled other parcels. So they have indicated they would prefer to lease, but it's on the list because it's in the area. There's back area where there could be parking, which is circled there. There's also a next slide. You can see this is 2 office buildings that could be available. So, you know, maybe there's a way to talk to that owner and say, you know, we'd like to take the office space and some parking. We'd like to purchase could we fit in your plan somehow? They've been talking, this is a good hotel site, and they may say that's the last thing we want is because, that's not going to help our hotel, but again, it's on the list because of the location, because there is a number of warehouse buildings. They've got like a tree storage group down there, so there's a big open lot. Or maybe it's just going back to the previous slide, Joe. Maybe it's just trying to tuck in the back of that where whatever they do up front isn't effective.
When did that change hands? When did Sutter sell it?
That was a few months ago.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
And so now it's owned by,
a local individual.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what about the property that probably is Caltrans property?
Yes, this is Caltrans property.
Okay, but and also the vacant area there, go
Under the freeway.
very top, under the freeway, Caltrans, right up there.
Yeah.
Up here.
That might be one public agency leasing from another, for parking.
Maybe.
I know there's been look at this interchange here
Oh,
in the past too, so that may be more complicated.
Oh, yeah, that's that.
Yeah, they want to.
And this is really congested with traffic at the end of the day, as people try to make it to the east bay, so there may be
They're backed up on 101.
yes.
but our staff works 6 to 2. We get out of here before, we have a really early time frame to get people home before traffic.
Yeah, they're gonna redo that whole exit.
And that was one of the challenges that Sutter had with his property. The traffic here on Bellum and the traffic between the two freeways is really, it's not ideal.
I'm sorry, when you said 29.75 million, that included the Marin Square, that whole thing?
Yes,
Oh,
correct.
okay.
Marin Square, this entire shopping
That's the
center.
part that's more valuable by far.
Well,
I
it's falling
know.
apart. It's not, Sutter just sat on it.
Yeah, it's kind of tear down, isn't it?
It is
You're right.
decrepit. It is not the Marin Square it was.
Right. Although I think that the office buildings may be salvageable. So they've done some demo in those office buildings, and I think they're actually trying to release those as office.
Okay.
Which is what you need, so that could actually be an option.
And it's a juggernaut, but I imagine that our staff would get in trucks and go down Anderson and come back over the hill into our district.
Yes.
Yes.
It's a great drive in.
It's,
Yeah, well, I saw Tora.
Yeah, they go down Anderson. So,
And that would be
Planet of the Apes.
yeah,
Okay.
I'm just saying, it's centrally located. You're not trying to get past it if we were to be there. I had no idea that Sutter was sold that. That was remarkable.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. This is a client that we represent. This was George Lucas's first building, the very first THX theater.
Oh, is this in here?
Well, I don't want to start it on saying this on
No, is that in
Okay,
here?
right?
Okay, so it's not in here. It's not in here.
Oh, you're right.
Remember the, yeah.
Yeah, that's fine. I just can stop looking for it.
You
Yeah.
can't.
Yeah, we'll just stick here, yeah.
So, the building, can you put your little, so there's a baseball school called Line Drive that's in this warehouse, and there's a production company called 3210 Studios in the office. So you've got a combination of some office in this building with about 6,000 feet of high-cube warehouse over 30-foot ceiling. So that was a green room. They filmed commercials there now, but they did a lot of special effects and a lot of filming in this facility. You can see there's parking all around. John, what was the count?
85 spaces from the plans we have to be confirmed on an on-site visit, but
So Line Drive would have some of those, and but there's probably still enough, for your use. Again, not on the market, but it's right up the street, and it's.
and that's 2 parcels?
correct.
Yeah. And how big is the Clayton parcel, for example? Is that over an acre?
I believe both are about an acre, acre and a half.
Okay.
They total of 3 acres.
Okay.
And what's going on in there now?
There's some film production guys. It's 3210 Kerner in there now. Comcast is not utilizing all this space. This is a building that could be coming to market. And Comcast had space on the market for sublease, so it's kind of known that they don't need all that. It's a 28,000 foot building. So if you go to the next slide, you can see this area, Joe, where it says 35 parking spaces. That's an area that potentially could be fenced for your vehicles. And the area in front is not being used much with 53 parking places. So it would be, if Comcast, since they had space on the market for sublease, would be willing to give up the second floor. I think this has the intrinsics of what you're looking for, but you have a tenant there that has a lease with options. So it would really be working out something with Comcast. But they've indicated that they don't need all the space. They were trying to sublease it, as I mentioned. So,
Yeah, this is, to be clear, right on Anderson, next to the Osh building here. And these,
in the Osh building, we had on the list, and we moved it to the second tier of properties because we heard that somebody has subleased that already from Osh. So Osh, as you know, is owned by Lowe's, and they weren't making enough profit there. We thought that could be a potential, but they've already found a subtenant, so that's not one to consider. And then we just, again, in the same thought process, just thinking of sites that could be considered. There's a couple of parcels out on Windward Lane that are right around the Lucas buildings, and they don't have the proper zoning. One of them is being used by Toyota Marin. So not a good fit, but we were just looking, here's a big parcel of land. So Osh building, again, thought it might be a good candidate until.
Now, do you know who the subtenant is?
No.
It's a really large property. You might, I mean, that would be more than we need, but my thought on that is we could talk to Larkspur, even Santa Fe, and see if they need some of ours in the long term.
Well, it could have been interesting, but we were told that it's been leased.
Okay. Right.
And again, this is a kind of a living document. If somebody, that isn't the case, then it can come back up.
Okay.
the advantage of the Osh parcel compared to the Comcast parcel is that you can see here, I tried to highlight, these are the PG&E power lines. They have an easement over the property. You can see the orientation of the building is adjusted accordingly.
And are there power lines there now?
There are.
What about the other parcel on Windward on the other side? That's zoned.
Yeah. So yeah, this parcel on the left is the one that is properly zoned, currently vacant. This is actually a combination of 3 parcels here. EO Products is down here. They may have looked at this property in the past. We're not sure. But the parcel on the other side is zoned for residential. However, Toyota Marin was approved to put a parking lot for storage of their vehicles on this site recently. This aerial photograph does not reflect the recent paving of the bottom portion of the site.
but the other site is probably a better site, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, this one here, yeah.
This is another site near the service. Is that's
This is in our service.
that's in your service area?
Yes.
But, you know, we put it on, kind of drove around, looked at it, said it's too constrained, so.
Most of it.
So that's just an initial, to get the discussion going of locations, types of buildings.
What was that,
Oh, I think
what was the
what we should do
hand
is-
signal
I
over
think
there,
we
Steve?
I think I should give Peyton some direction in maybe shooting some of these down and saying, I don't think this will work for us, why don't we continue with some of the others?
Yeah,
Well,
exactly,
I have some issues too around zoning.
yeah.
You know, to move ahead, you gotta really know what the zoning is and what are the hurdles.
Well, let's go through
But let me
each
finish.
property
Can I finish?
individually.
Can I finish one? The other thing is earthquake. You know, a lot of these buildings, have they been standardized to be earthquake proof? So there's those things. If we start going out all over the place, we may have to narrow it down. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Yes.
Thank
Right.
you.
Well, I expect that we're gonna have to do some remodeling no matter what, or just about any parcel. But maybe we should just go through the parcels and see.
Yeah, let's go through these that we have first.
One in your head.
And Steve, did you have a question or a comment?
Oh, that was just regarding that Green Brace site. I think technically it's an SB2.
Oh,
The sewers, that they're going to the SB2.
This
Can
Green Rock
I
site?
just say, I don't think that's a good site for us anyway.
Right, it has issues. Yeah, and I think there will be, we'll have, I'll encourage you to discuss criteria as
So,
board member makes.
If I may, I would say both Green Bray and San Anselmo, I don't think I'd spend a lot of time with those two.
No, I
Anybody
don't.
disagree?
Yeah.
What's wrong with
San,
San
what's
Anselmo?
wrong with San Anselmo?
I think it's asking a staff to go too far in and too far out. That, you know, I come from San Anselmo to my office, which is where a lot of, you know, you're going to CMSA, you're going to other parts of our district. I just think
It's smack in the middle of our district.
well,
The going far is from where we are now, all the way to Fairfax.
okay.
well, then I wanted to hear what Doug, as a former member of the San Anselmo Town Council,
so
would say.
I
Do you think the San Anselmo Town Council wants the Rossvalley Sanitary
I think
District
they-
right downtown?
I don't think they oppose that, and I think you would probably be right on the fact that if it's zoned for that, I can't find it now, then I don't think that would be a problem. You know, office and industrial, I don't think that would be a problem.
That's the old, it's a warehouse now, right? The rentals, is that the one you're talking about? In San Anselmo?
Yeah, so one that has the Tamalpais Theater front.
Right,
Right.
Yeah, I mean, that building's,
and by the way, you can make a little bit of money because he rents out his marquee. Yes, those messages aren't free.
I think we might take down the marquee, I mean, if it's not, or.
We're sanitary
Well,
district
actually, you can.
meeting tonight.
Oh, might not be.
Advertise your specials, sewer hookups this week.
I actually think that's a historical landmark and you probably can't.
No, you can take it.
You can take
Yeah,
it.
the owner has considered taking that off, yeah.
what are you talking about?
The marquee sign.
And the city would let them say.
So I don't think that would be out of range. I don't think the lot's big enough, to be honest with you.
It's 31,000, it's a little bit small, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe a little tight.
Do you have is it two-story?
Pardon?
The front, the one building is two-story. The 324, 332 is a two-story office building. It has retail and office.
And the building size is the total, sum of the two, 18,000.
Correct.
It's a little, it's not quite big enough, but it's in the range.
That's small.
So yeah. Well, we heard what Doug thinks about whether staff would want to drive in and out of that.
Oh, I see, you're saying staff getting there.
Yeah, it's.
What does staff think about driving in and out of with downtown San Anselmo? I mean,
Stephen, you want to give your assessment of the accessibility in terms of service calls from that location to the rest of the service district?
It's a perfect location being in central,
Oh.
for noise, vehicle checks in the morning, I don't know if there's residents right there, that might be an issue.
What is the noise that would be going on?
Trucks
Back up.
backing up.
beep, 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 beep.
No, they won't. They won't like that.
So
Exactly.
you-
Right, you'll have to change your hours.
Could you, could you turn your trucks around at night so you can back up?
You have to do a vehicle check and check the beep as part of the vehicle inspection.
Oh.
It's mandatory for the state.
What is it?
Beeping. Check the
Back
back
up alarm.
Make sure it beeps when you back up.
It's
So you have to back
mandatory
up
for the
to make it
state that you do it in the morning.
Yes, or before the drive.
Pre-trip. And don't become anti-regulation on it.
Brake checks.
I think we've probably come up with more problems than we
I
would
think
anticipate.
A night's vacation.
That's a good point for us to know, because I think if you're tucked against residential, it's gonna be,
It is gonna be
it's gonna be problematic.
Yeah.
And even if the town says, okay, if all your neighbors are upset, that doesn't help you guys, right? You don't wanna be fighting that.
Right, I mean, ironically,
Not in the
right tucked up against that hill used to be the garbage.
The
You
San
know, like,
Anselmo garbage, right over,
but it was tucked up against the hill and building.
But on the bright side, there's a pool we could crash.
Up where they built the new Stapleton,
Yeah.
back there, there's a whole lot that they want to build 32 residential units, and the neighbors are all up in arms about that.
Okay, so,
that's probably a no.
I'm thinking we're,
Okay.
no. And then can we knock off Green Brick? Because I think that's.
Oh, yeah, that was on our list of things that essentially needs knocked
Okay.
off.
To be honest with you,
and-
while it's appealing windward, I'd rather see more buildings that exist than plan on buying some land and building, I mean, the beauty of that is you probably could buy it all, use half of it, and sell the other half if you did something, developed it or something, but.
I mean, I would just say that if we're doing this for a year, 18 months, and it's like, we can't find anything, let's just build. But I agree, that would be the first thing to do, because with construction costs and everything else, you could probably buy something that you could rehab with less brain damage.
I like the Marin Square choices.
I do too.
think that'd be worth looking into. And
And when you say, pardon me,
Yeah.
when you say that part is owned by Caltrans or whatever, is that what you said?
I said,
No, way up there.
Is that to take the train to Larkspur?
No,
no.
Okay.
no,
That's
let's redo the overpass.
But
580,
unfortunately, it's on that really busy access road to 680 or 580.
Yeah, but I think that's busy at certain times of the day, and then it's also right there.
but my understanding is they're gonna rebuild,
The
they're
rain.
gonna tear that whole thing out, and it's gonna be in what they wanna do is get rid of the stoplights
Yes.
at the other side,
That's right.
and make that go directly into 580.
Right.
Yes,
And
I.
so that's gonna be under construction for ages.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that would make the price go down.
And we're gonna be around for a long
And
time.
that's what you mentioned. First thing, listen, we're not stupid. We know this thing's be construction in the next 5 years, so we'll give you half.
Do you think our Larkspur Landing property is more valuable than it would be easy to look at?
Yes.
Of course.
Okay.
Okay, so let's see, get rid of the windward ones,
Yeah, I'd say.
both of them?
And all we're doing here is we're getting an idea of what might be appropriate,
Right.
because other properties may become available that we're even unaware of yet.
Exactly, exactly.
This is just to get
This
an
was a first take,
Yeah.
because again, you say, and I was probably a little off on the Corps of Madera, well, we're not doing the Corps of Madera, well, then why even research that any further? So, yeah.
Did we take off Anderson?
Comcast?
Yeah.
Why?
I don't know, did we?
No.
No, I think that's okay.
We took off Osh.
Osh took off Osh.
I love the orientation of that building because of the power
Yeah,
lines.
that's fine.
Okay, how will we auger something in here? There it is.
And then the Hertz rental, I don't think that's all.
Which one is that? That's
Well, it's in Corte Madera, but not, you know, some of the others are not in our district either. That seems like a lot of land.
Is that the one that presents the valuables?
Next to the pump station and the Trek bike store.
Hertz rental site, Paradise Drive, Corte Madera. Right, you thought that might be valuable for some other reason? Oh, because it.
I'm just
because
saying
the eyeballs-
locationally, right, yeah. it's-
But you could make some inquiries and find out maybe you're, you know,
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, if your initial inclination is it's probably more expensive, then it probably is.
Right.
No, I'm not against.
Yeah, I mean,
So,
yeah.
Okay.
So just a point of clarification, Hayden, then what you're saying is Corte Madera properties are going to be higher square footage
Generally
per price than San Rafael
Yes.
properties?
This is
In the
it's a broad
same zone,
statement.
of the same zoning.
Yeah, because they're right near the malls and they're right off the highway.
And Southern Marin generally is more expensive.
so Pace Supply is a potential candidate.
Yeah, I think Pace is a candidate.
That's Lovell Avenue.
I thought you said there wasn't enough parking. Did you say that?
I said if you just count the spaces, 34 is not enough, but if you look at the size of the lot, you guys could maybe fit more on there. So if you just said 34 parking places, we need 50, you say it's too small. It's an awkward lot to stripe it legally, but you guys could probably get a lot more cars on there. So I think at this point, it's worth keeping it in the mix to see if you can fit your trucks on there.
Or if there's something else in that general area that they
Or
also.
that doesn't work, but man, this, turns out this is a great area because we don't have to drive all the way to San Anselmo and what else is around it, and then we'll come back in the next meeting with other ideas.
So Stephen, you want to weigh in on access to the rest of the district from this site? Okay. There are a couple of schools nearby, so school traffic is a potential consideration, but, not an absolute deal breaker.
Which school?
Sounds like you're out before a lot of the school traffic, right? If you're out on the road at 7.
But we're back right when schools are coming.
Okay.
Coming out.
That too, it's gonna be
Yeah.
Is anything happening with that area? If you turn like you're gonna go down Woodland, you go underneath the train tracks, there's that whole big section that's undeveloped at the base there. Is anything happening out there? There's both sides of the road on that one.
I know that's next to a marsh area on the other side. Both sides have vacant land, and then the one side away from the road has a lot of marsh. I would imagine there may be environmental concerns there. Other than that,
That's something we can research, though.
The problem with that?
And that's why it's not developed, is because it's.
that would be my guess.
Yeah.
Do we want
I know
to
people
build
have
for
tried.
a sea level rise too?
The people up on the hill, I know have balked at anything being built down there. But it is an industrial area.
Okay. Anyway, so the theater would be up.
I definitely, I mean, that's antique, they want antique stores and CrossFit down there. They don't want the
You don't
sanitary.
think having a sanitation district would attract tourists to sanitation?
I mean, not that the antique store can stay in business, it seems, but that's what keeps coming back. And the chiropractor, right?
So-
There's chiropractor.
There are some ones that are not in your agenda packet, just to
Okay.
make sure
Oh,
you
great.
keep in mind.
So, but from this packet, I see we have 3. I just went through them.
Possibilities.
Three top choices.
Sure. Yeah, all of those are integrated into this more updated
Okay.
presentation.
So
But again, this whole
we're
thing
going to
is.
continue to look
Right.
Yes.
and think of things.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Mostly they just got feedback from us, right?
Yeah.
Without even they didn't have to give us a survey. They now know all concerns that we would express and staff would express.
We'll hear about the trucks backing out.
Yeah.
You know, that-
Yes.
We tried to do a deal with Comcast up at Hamilton Landing, and the neighbors showed up with beepers. The kids were wearing beepers to the meeting, having them go off. And, so didn't, yeah, that's a good consideration. I mean, let's not have it right next to a bunch of houses.
Notice that.
That's smart.
Yeah.
Okay, what were you looking for that?
Comcast.
Oh, Comcast, they have to do beep checks too?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
This has been great. I was wondering if the board had any input on criteria, or, because you've looked at specific sites. And you've touched on a few, but if we haven't touched on everything you think about, maybe some things to think about from the needs report that, to tell the consultant.
Well, I think every municipality's planning department is different. And so some people are going to be more loose and some are going to be really strict. I was a planning commissioner for 8 years. And it'll make you or break you, am I right? It just, yeah. So I think those things should probably be somewhat talked about.
Yeah,
Maybe tonight's probably premature.
right.
Zoning, like I said, it depends. The
Well, I mean, for
noise is
example,
another
the
thing.
Comcast, that's, they're doing that very use. They have all the things that you're doing, they're doing. They have warehouse, they're storing, yeah.
So there's that.
Right.
And then, how long are we planning to be there? Is this permanent? Is this
Should we
temporary?
plan?
Is this temporary?
I don't think we want to buy a property where we have to change the zoning. I don't think that's going to fly.
No, I agree with that.
Yeah, and I think we have our area requirements, and then you brought up something, it's ease of employees to get to there, many of whom live in Sonoma or North.
And if I could wave my magic wand, it would be nice if it was one building rather than two separate buildings. You know, it's not critical, it's not, but it'd be nice if the general manager could get out of the warehouse without putting on a raincoat in February. You know?
Or getting in a car.
Right, well, that would,
Yeah, and you know that we're linked to CMSA, or we provide more sewage to the Central Maine Sanitation Agency than anybody else, and they're on Anderson, and so that feels like appropriate to me.
yeah.
Even though Anderson is not in our district, it feels much closer to our district because of the way you could come over Anderson and get to Larkspur Landing, which is in our district, or get on the freeway and go further up and get to the more northern part of Larkspur. So I think Anderson is a good.
Well, you're not going to have neighborhood opposition.
Absolutely,
Right.
yeah.
The other thing it would be important, it would be nice to have a meeting room in our building that was better than this. When we have the rare times when we're raising rates or we're doing something and the public comes, we meet at Larkspur Police Station right now, but that's not a guarantee. It wasn't available tonight, for example. So having a room where we can have our own meetings, we're supposed to meet in our district unless our headquarters is not in the district, in which case we can meet in our headquarters. That's why we're able to meet here tonight. This is not our district, but this is our headquarters.
The biggest problem with this room is that if we have the public here, they have
They go
access. They go upstairs, they go into offices and break rooms and things like that, so.
It's not ideal. So that's an important consideration. But again, a lot of these are wishful thinking. We're not going to find the perfect property.
Right.
And then, what city is it? Is it Larkspur that wants to know if they can park some of their trucks
Yes,
on our
Larkspur,
land?
yeah.
So the city of Larkspur wants to know if they can park some of their trucks on our Larkspur Landing property right now. So I'd like to keep that in mind,
Yeah,
maybe.
that's right.
So in terms of not enough parking versus too much parking, let's do more parking and
Right.
rent it out to
That's-
Larkspur. Which again, right around Anderson from the town of the city, part of the city.
I don't know if you looked at Osh because you looked at Osh, but I did ask Felicia to have you look at Osh. And my thought with Osh is, I knew it was too big, but we could make some phone calls to San Rafael, to Corte Madera, and say, listen, we're going to buy this property. Do you have long-term needs where you want to put a bunch of your, and we could make a deal with some other towns. It could be the Marin Corporate Center. Our headquarters could be there, but it could be the Marin Corporate Center. So.
Yeah, and there's enough demand that we could help, even if it's not governmental agencies, just getting private sector tenants.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, well, we can't direct you to go buy some product.
Well, there's not anyone on the market.
If all this were to come to pass, that we
Keep
were
looking.
found a nice piece of property, is this property, would people be interested,
Yeah,
do
they
you think,
would.
in buying this
They
property
would,
pretty quick?
Yeah. There's not a lot of buildings for sale of any type. This is a good size.
Have you been in the general manager's office?
Well, I met you upstairs. No, I haven't.
It's a large office, but the view is it looks out on the bay of the marsh, and it's really nice.
Yeah.
So that's where you bring people, that's where you bring people immediately to talk.
There's some warehouse space in this building?
Pardon me?
Is there some warehouse space in this building?
No. We are so, we're.
We have other property.
Right. I looked at some old plans, I mean.
This was built as cook paging.
What did we pay for this?
I think all,
I've been around here a long
what was it,
time.
2.1? And then we did some improvements to it, to the tune of.
And when did we buy it?
2009.
That was 2009?
Right at the bottom of the market.
Yeah. That's right.
That was probably
It's
pretty
paid
good.
for too.
Yep.
It's
Yeah.
paid for?
It's paid for.
Now, one of the things that I think would work is you know they build those wine tunnels, they get that big order, and they go in, so if we have a hill, and we park our, we could park our trucks in there, and they can back up in it, underneath the.
Well, let's ask CNSA, we can start boring in there.
We're not buying a back cave, okay?
CNSA has a hill.
And does it, they have an auger and a,
No, we have to get that. They think I'm kidding, but actually it would work. It's not that expensive construction. Or giant.
okay.
That's okay.
I'm not that desperate yet.
I think we can be done
I
with this.
think-
Okay.
I think a gym would be fabulous. Or some kind of exercise room. No, really.
I agree.
I think it's
School board.
That's something that you can easily outfit
It is,
Yeah.
yeah.
later, yeah.
Are we all done here?
I think so.
I think we're.
I think so.
Thanks
Thanks very much, Joan, and thank you, Abe.
Nice to meet you.
Thanks for being back there. Okay, now.
13.
I imagine our guys are going to be hanging out so at the end of the day.
So agenda item 13 is consideration of accepting the district's CTED evaluation report completed in accordance with GASP 75. And we have Mr. Ira, sir?
Summer.
Summer.
Summer, spelled like this season.
Yeah,
We can do that. And so we have the.
how do you spell Ira?
Yeah, there you go.
Okay.
Just named after a different.
Okay. Well, do you want-
So I'd be happy to provide an introduction to the board. Several months back, the board approved a contract with GovInvest, that provides actuarial services as well as a software program that can do some modeling for the district in terms of its pension obligations and other post-employment retirement benefits. The GovInvest module is currently under development for the district. I'll be looking forward to an opportunity to share that with the board at a future meeting. But the actuarial reports that are required as part of our annual audit process, the Governmental Accounting Standards Board statement number 68 and number 75. And I'm going to kind of address items 13 and 14 together with regards to our pension liabilities and other post-retirement benefit liabilities. These two GASB statements have been prepared by Precision Actuarial, which Ira worked with.
That's it, right there.
Part of-
They're a partner of ours.
Okay.
Technically, yeah, we're the software company, we're the actuaries. But we have, I spent 30 years as an actuary. I used to be, back in the late 90s, I was the auditing actuary for CalPERS. I worked across the agencies, actually across hundreds of agencies across the country on pension and healthcare issues. But this report
Question, are the two companies related or just part?
we're partners right now, we're
Partners,
not.
okay.
So.
Owned
it's-
separately but relying on one another
Yeah.
to provide a full service solution for agencies like ourselves that are looking for not just the required actuarial report, but this opportunity to use software, like I said, to model liabilities. So, I'm sorry, that pretty much concludes the introduction. Ira's going to go into some detail about the two report results.
Okay, so the first question I have though is, and we discussed this in the Finance Committee, was the ROPEB liability last year, it was $125,000.
It was $250, we paid off half.
We paid off
And
half.
after we paid off half, it tripled from the original amount.
And what is the explanation of that? Is that that wasn't in accordance with GASB 75? Previous?
So this is, let me just check, this is the first time that you are, that you're complying with GASB statement 75. Okay, a few years ago, the government accounting standards were changed the standards. They created standard 68, actually 67, 68, a couple others that don't apply to me, and then 74 and 75. It's a change in philosophy. What they're basically saying with these new standards is that you made promises for your pension, for your retiree health care. And to the extent that they are not completely funded, then those obligations now have to go on your books. In the past, what the old standard said was you make a plan. You decide you're going to fund your pension, like CalPERS says, for 20, 30 years. You have an obligation to make a payment each year. If you make that payment, then nothing goes in your books. You're on track. And on the retiree health side, usually what happened is you supposedly made a plan, and most agencies didn't actually pay that, so the difference between what you expensed and what you actually contributed, that went on your books. That was probably the $125,000 you're talking about. The standards changed. So now for liability purposes, your unfunded liability, the amount you're behind target, goes on your books. You now have a much bigger liability showing up on your books under GASB Statement 75, under GASB 68, than you had under the old GASB 45 and GASB 27. Your expense is calculated in a very accounting way, which is basically if your liability was, here this year, last year, and it's here this year, the difference is your expense. It's how do you get from where you were to where you are now. That's your expense each year. That from an accountant perspective, that's useful information. It just makes sure your books balance, and you can always track from last year to this year. From a planning perspective, that's not really helpful information. The question, if I were on your side of the table here, that I would be asking isn't, how much the accountants want me to show, but how much do I need to put in each year to make the liability go away? That's a different question. Now on the GASB 68 side, where we put the report together using information that we got from CalPERS. All your employees are in the California Public Employees Retirement System, CalPERS. CalPERS creates a few things. They do an actuarial evaluation each year. That is something where they tell you how much you contribute. That if you contribute those amounts are enough to eventually, over a 30-year period, but they're going to be shrinking it to 20, will get you to be 100% funded if things don't go too bad or get too strange. And I can explain what that is later if you really care.
We do.
So I can go into all the assumptions they've got. On the retiree health side, on the OPEB side, what this report shows, it shows you the accounting information, but there's also in there a couple pages about what's called actuarially determined contribution. Since you're looking for them, let me put my glasses on, otherwise I can't see the reports.
Page 5 of 6.
Page 5 of 6 is more, I guess that's a summary of the information. Page 6 is absolutely an accounting move forward. This is more like page 13 or 14.
He's looking at the GASB 75,
GASB 75 report. Yeah, so we're talking about the retiree health right now.
So what page are we looking at?
Page 14 of the report.
Okay.
Is basically, the actuarial methodology to use this is the same, is similar to the methodology that CalPERS uses to calculate the contribution rates each year. It's a little bit simplified. CalPERS dealing with thousands of agencies and wanting to take care of tens of thousands of contingencies has created a very complex methodology, but the concept's the same. You have what's called the normal cost. That's basically the funding methodology is designed with the concept that retiree health benefits or pension benefits are benefits for your employees. They earn them while they're working. You're not giving them as gifts to retirees. You're basically saying because you work here, you get a benefit. So most of your benefits you account for while they're working. That's when you're getting the service for them. That's when you set the money aside to pay for it. So the concept is you fund from the day they start till the day they leave. And hopefully that's enough money to pay for all the benefits you're going to give them later on the pension side and the healthcare side. The amount you pay each year during that time period for each year that they accrue benefit is called the normal cost. So you pay that. Now, we also look at the fact that if you were paying the normal costs throughout all the time and everything happened as the actuaries assumed, you'd be right on target, that's all you'd ever have to pay. But benefits go up faster than expected. On the retiree health side, healthcare tends to jump up at different points in time. Just when you think you have it under control, it starts shooting up again. On the pension side, the biggest things that have happened are the markets plummeting 10 years ago and about 20 years ago, 2000 to 2002 and 2007 to 2008. And since 2007, 2008, CalPERS getting more conservative in their assumptions. Back then, they figured they were going to earn an average of 8.25% per year. They've been slowly ratcheting it down to get it down to, so that next year, they're going to be assuming 7% moving forward.
What's the 7.28?
7.28 on the retiree health side. You put some money aside into a trust fund that is actually administered by the same investment people that administer the CalPERS agency. Its acronym is CERBT, CERB, the California Employees Retiree Benefit Trust, something like that. They have 3 different investment choices, sort of a more conservative, a medium, and and what they consider slightly more aggressive. It's not really that aggressive, it's still relatively conservative. You picked the most conservative of the 3 to have your money invested in. CalPERS has said, their investment expert said that investment mix should average 7.28% per year. So they're the experts. We use that as our assumption.
Are they making that?
The last couple of years they beat it. The year before that they didn't. This year, and the way the market's gone the last few days, who knows?
Okay, I have a question. If we pay the actuarially determined contribution, will we be fully funding our pension? Or will we be back in that circle again?
Okay, if you make these contributions, because this is the recommendation, is to make the actuarially determined contribution.
Okay, that's on page 14?
That's on page 14 here. And I'll get, and actually let me make sure I explain a little bit about what that means, but let me answer your question first, then I'll go into, if you decide you're going to do that, before you say you're going to do it, I want to make sure you understand what that means. So to answer your question to start with, if you make this contribution, and if on average, not every year, on average, the fund earns 7.28%, and if the healthcare stays roughly where the assumptions are in growth, and your people don't you don't actually, even if you hire a whole bunch of new people, it should be okay. If your people don't start retiring much earlier, a few caveats in there. In 20 years, you will be 100% funded on the retiree health plan. You will be right on target. Then your contributions will go down to normal cost level, which is a lower level. And in fact, in less than 20 years, right now, you're mostly making your contributions on a pay-as-you-go basis. You're paying the benefits that retirees are owed. You're putting a little bit more away every once in a while. If you make these contributions in less than 20 years, In fact, the table that we have, that we put in the back of your, the
On
summary.
page 5 of the staff report.
Yeah, it's by page 5 of the staff report, shows that in about 15 years, you will have earned enough on investment return that your total contributions will be less than the payments you're making to retirees.
That's 13 years.
Yeah, so you'll be at a point where your payments will start going down below the level it is, and once you're at 100% funded, you'll go down to a level below that, and you'll just be paying for the benefits earned by the current employees each year, which is not going up nearly as fast as medical insurance or other things like that. So,
Okay, where did you get the information for page 5 on your report?
Ira and I had this conversation to include this because this is a combination of your, what he's saying is the normal cost, the implicit subsidy, and then what goes into the service. It becomes the actuarial determined.
and I pulled all of that out of the report.
Okay, well, it agrees in the first year, and then it doesn't agree in the second year.
Hold on, what do you mean?
So the first year it's 93,284. And then in the actuary in your thing on page 14, it's 96. And over here it's 95.
Hold on.
Is this an earlier version or something?
No, I was pulling it off of the information. So I pulled it off the information on page 18.
On page 18.
And the reason I pulled off the information on page 18 and column A, B, C, D, which deals with just current employees. So the,
Well, it doesn't agree either.
should,
93.
let me make sure I grab, let me look at the table. Let me,
Yeah, it agrees on employer contributions.
Yeah.
okay,
I don't understand it all, but I
Page
can
18.
find numbers that match up.
Okay, so what can I do? It's not the portion of the line, it's the total contribution, which is what we're interested in.
Yes.
Okay, yes, it does agree. I was looking at the wrong column.
Phew.
And I gotta tell you, it's damn hard to follow this stuff. I really go through it.
is,
And so, okay, so the point is, if we contribute the actuarially determined contribution and the assumptions are what you based it on, then we will be paying off. We will be up at 0 at 13 years. If the assumptions, if the actual is different than the assumptions, which they're going to be, it's 100%.
They're guesses, they're assumptions.
They're guesses. And it's 100% that they're going to be different. They may be higher, they may be lower, whatever. But we readjust every 3 years?
every 2 years now.
Every 2 years.
Every 2 years.
So we can catch up. And so then,
Or you can slow down.
and if we made a greater than actuarial, if we added something to that,
If you put more
we
money
contributed
away,
125,000, it says we need to contribute about 93. So then it'd be better than that.
right, if you do it faster, if you make more payments, it'll be faster. And this is sort of the discussion, a discussion that I normally have with boards related more to the pension side. Now, on the retiree health side, right now, you don't really have a plan to get to, eventually to get to 100%.
Okay.
Now,
If we do this, we do.
you at least have a plan at this point. You have a plan. Yeah, the starting point is always make a plan to get, know where you're supposed to go, make a plan to get there and start following. Track it every once in a while, go readjust to get back to your target. That's great. So I think a big step, we could do a better plan, but a big step is make a plan, follow the plan, start there, because things aren't going to go exactly as expected. Healthcare is going to go in some strange directions over the next few years. I don't know if it's going to be better or worse. I have thoughts in my head, but I'm generally a pessimist. So, and then on the pension side,
Well, let's just do this one.
but the discussion that you're starting to have right now is one I'd like to have with you on the pension side, because CalPERS forces you to have a plan and follow it. Proposition 162, the Pension Protection Act of 1992, basically says if CalPERS asks you for money, you have to make that contribution. It's just as much a request as when my ex-wife used to ask me.
It's within fits.
That's not optional. It's just, yeah.
And if we follow the actuarial determined contribution on the pension plan, and the assumptions are the same as we use then.
And then on the pension side, it's currently set, most agencies in your position will be 100% funded in 25
In
years.
25 years.
Give or take, yeah.
Okay.
So, and most agencies right now are looking at, if your reserves are in good shape and you have extra money on the pension side, they're thinking about doing what we're talking about, putting a little extra money aside, trying to get there faster, so that you're in better shape and you don't have to make the contributions, because probably 2/3 of the contributions you will be making over the next decade are paying off your unfunded liability, paying off this debt. If you put money in ahead, you'll make it back in interest, usually 2-1. So if you put aside $100,000, you put an extra $100,000 in now, you'll probably save, that 100 plus another, at least another 100 in interest over the next 20 years. So it's worthwhile. Most agencies that we've looked at, it's worth doing if you have the resources. I don't know what the rest of your books look like, and I know you'll clearly have some things you need to spend money on. But, trying to decide the relative value, if you're not gonna, put cash in the building, right away, or you don't have to put things for that, putting into the pension plan can give you flexibility in your budget, 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, and give you more room for things like that.
Yeah, and it's also being good stewards of the public money.
Bill?
So I did a little research. I called Roger. I think he did the study.
He did the study, I did the review, and then they're his numbers, I'm
So
okay with
what I found out, which was really interesting, was our funded pension plan right now is at 22%.
your retiree health plan.
Yeah. 4 years ago, it was 21%. So there's something wrong with this picture. And it's going to take us 20 years to get up to 100%.
Well, because remember that what we're saying with these new, with GASB 74 and 75,
Right.
the rules have changed.
The
So
rules-
4 years
the rules
ago,
changed, but if you were 20%, let's call it 20 and 20, let's say it's about the same place. If you're 20% funded 4 years ago, you're 20% funded now.
under the new GASB rules.
It is new GASB rules, but if Roger's talking about, he's probably talking about a similar measure. Now, it's not what I said in the beginning about different information going on your books. If you were, there was this measure, you just didn't put it on your books before. You had it as a footnote that nobody paid attention to. So if you were 20% funded 4 years ago and you're 20% funded now, I'm guessing that a big reason for that is you didn't consistently put money away.
Right, so that's why I'm bringing it up publicly, is I'm very concerned on where we've been and where we're going now. I mean, it's a good time to really reflect and fix it, but I am concerned it's going to take that long to get ahead.
We have been making additional monies. Last year was 125 extra, the year before that the same. Or I mean, it's 2 years ago, we did 250 or something like that.
Are you talking about OPE?
I'm only talking about
pension. What are you talking about?
Pension.
Okay, I'm talking about
That's 14, and we're on 13.
Right now, because your pension is much more, you were talking to Roger, you were talking about the retiree health plan.
Okay, I thought we ever, okay, never mind.
So, and the retiree health plan, which, going back to, we were talking about page 5 here, where you are, you're just about 40% funded right now. which is, so you've been moving in the right direction.
Are you on 14?
What page
I'm
are
on page 3, which
Of
has,
what?
of your retiree health report.
Okay, no. It's too confusing to bop back and forth.
you? Yeah,
Okay,
I say we do OPEB.
yes, that's right.
this is the OPEB
Then we
report.
talk about the retirement one.
Yeah, sorry, I sometimes switch back and forth.
When you-
That's what I
between
thought,
acronym
that's why I brought it up. 'cause
And
we
retiree
said-
health.
I'm
No,
bringing
I see we're
14.
doing-
I'm not talking,
Okay, thank you.
pension, I'll talk about as pension.
Thank you.
This
What's
is,
the Roger
I'll-
talking about, yes?
if you prefer, I'll always call it OPEB, I just,
Yeah, let's do it.
OPEB and pension.
I'm not a big fan of acronyms, that's why I tend not to use OPEB.
On page, 3, you said page 14?
Page 3, I say page 3. Page 3 is the summary, and page 3 says, and, you know, as
This
of,
page is your executive summary.
sorry, not page 3, the executive summary, page 3
Of
of
OPEB.
the report.
I think
And
that's,
the 75. Page,
That's
yeah,
74.
basically says,
284.
the actual number, you're 35% funded.
Isn't that in a column
I
somewhere?
want to make sure.
I believe that's the right page.
Huh?
I believe that page is.
This,
Okay, here's the number right there.
right, where's the 40%?
35% is where you are right now, 40% is where you're projecting for next year, to
Okay.
start following this path.
Okay.
So we're going in the right direction.
And you're moving in the right direction, right? That's assuming you adopt this process, and the report was put together basically assuming that you're gonna be moving in that direction. You did put, if I remember correctly, an extra $100,000 in last
Yes, we did.
year.
And then I think 3 years ago it was 250, right?
I think it was 200, but
Yeah.
somewhere in that.
But this year,
I'm sorry,
at this point, I don't think you committed to anything.
No.
Right.
Is there any more questions?
So what we were doing, I think the plan was 3 years ago, we put in 200, we skipped a year, we put in 100, so it's really 100 extra a year we were dumping in.
And if you do that, you'll be moving faster. If you really put 100,000 extra into that plan, you'll be moving faster than getting
20
there
years.
in 20 years.
So,
Yeah.
Which is fine, sorry, but just, information for, because I've been working with the board now on this for the last couple of years, and I think, when we first started talking about OPEB contributions, the district had already made a contribution of $200,000.
right.
And then there was an addition, then it was like, oh, well, that seemed like, a big contribution to the liability. But we weren't really quite sure we'd have a plan. So then there was a conversation that we had with the board, well, let's make sure we make a contribution, but maybe not as large of a contribution as $200,000. Let's make it a $100,000 contribution. And then let's really look at what those contributions mean over time, and then let's come up with a plan. And so that's where we are here
We
today.
had such a good gut sense. It's right around $100,000.
So,
I'd like to see us,
Yeah.
I was hoping with the information we had a year ago, that we were going to be fully up to date on our OPEB, but not pension, OPEB this year. So we're not gonna be, and you're saying 20 years on our OPEB. I'd rather get our OPEB down to 10 years
Okay.
by making the right,
and that's a policy direction from the board
Here's
itself.
what I think we ought to do. I think we ought to adopt this report with the understanding that we at least make the
Actuarially determined contribution.
At a minimum.
as a minimum, and then during budget, we figure out what to do.
yeah, I think that's fine. I agree with that.
Okay, so I have a motion.
And that's on page 8, that's on page 18 here,
No,
right here.
18.
It is 18, right here.
Or 5 of 6 of the staff report.
Right, yeah, that's
Yeah,
right.
okay,
But I would take it out of this, that's fine.
Okay.
so we don't.
Were you asking for a motion?
Yes.
I move that we accept the district's OPEB evaluation report for fiscal year ending June 30th, 2018, and adopt a policy to contribute at a minimum the actuarially determined contribution each year.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? I think that's what we all want to do. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay.
I'd also like to give a little further direction.
For the first time, I've understood a lot of it.
Sorry, I didn't mean to do that.
Yeah, I won't do it again.
What kind of an actual problem?
The problem is that if we fully understand what he said, we all have to run for another 6 terms.
Oh, no.
I'd like to offer ourselves, so What I'd also suggest we do, Tom, is we direct staff to put together a plan to pay our OPEB
Right.
outstanding liability to the best of our ability within 10 years.
Yeah, but to do alternatives, you
Yeah,
know,
that's
maybe
part of the budget
10 years,
process.
12 years.
Yeah,
That'd be
part of the
great.
budget.
Great
See
exercise.
what it takes.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, presumably we can put in the numbers very easily just to see where we,
Yeah, because we have that
how we get off
program.
in 10.
Although the program's not ready, as soon as it is, you'll be able to do that, but in the short term, Roger has it all set up. It's very easy to switch from a 20-year amortization to a 10-year or a 12-year. And just like if you're paying, if you have a mortgage on your house, that's 10 versus 20. 10 is more than 20, but 10 isn't twice what 20
Right.
is. And so just making some extra payments will start having a big impact.
Okay. And then the real one is when we turn the page and go to the pensions.
Right, but you know, what's really interesting about this is, okay, we've got this $600,000 something or other liability, but we're already budgeting about $100,000. And over the next 20 years, it peaks at 150, which is completely manageable for us, right? It's not, hey, we're not gonna
This is
chase
just
$1.5
open.
million or something.
We should make the employees come to these meetings.
So that's what's good about this plan. Even though it's gonna go up, but it's manageable.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's take a look at item 14. Consideration of accepting the defined benefit pension plan valuation report completed in accordance with GASB 68. Does this report do the same thing that the OPEB report does and tell us how much to pay following the assumptions?
No, but
Oh, yeah.
But you received, CalPERS does reports for you every year.
Yeah.
That tells you how much you need to contribute to do that. And CalPERS issued those reports for you, for all agencies, in August of this year.
Yeah.
I printed them out and carried them with me because I figured you would want to ask about that. And so right now, you're roughly 70-something% funded on the pension side, which I don't know if you think that's great or not great. That puts you above average, probably about the 70th percentile of agencies in California. Most of the agencies in California are in the 65 to 70% range. So you're a little above average. You're not outstanding. You're in pretty good shape compared to the other agencies. This is a number that if I came here 20 years ago to talk to you about it in 1990.
Where the hell were you?
Late 1990s, I was the auditing actuary for CalPERS. But in like 2000, most agencies, we had the stock market boom that shot through the roof.
Yeah.
Most agencies in California were more than 100% funded at that time. And at the time, people were basically saying, oh, the stock market's going to go up like this forever. It's never going to be a problem. Then it didn't, because that's not the way the stock market works, or any economics. So, stock market dropped, things got bad. Actually, agencies, when things were really good, when they hit their peak, many agencies across the state gave bigger benefits. They had so much money, they figured, oh, I can get bigger benefits, and my contribution will still be zero. As long as the markets keep earning 15 to 20% per year, you don't have to pay anything. Then the markets dropped. CalPERS got a little more conservative. Then the markets plummeted. And funded percentages went down to the 50 to 60% range for most agencies, and CalPERS got more conservative with their assumptions as they started coming back. Most of the deficit that agencies are looking at across the state right now is not because of benefit improvements you gave in 2000. It's because the markets dropped and CalPERS got more conservative. The state of California, Governor Brown, the legislature, passed a law in 2012, the Public Employee Pension Reform Act, that is referred to, if you look at your reports, you'll see one of these is a PEPRA miscellaneous, and then you have your regular plastic people on those with calipers reports. I don't know if you printed those out. for them.
No, I did not.
These are mine.
Yeah.
But employees that get hired starting in 2013 go into a slightly lower level of benefit. 2% at 62 is what is referred to as, basically, if you retire at age 62, your benefit's 2% for each year you work of your final pay. Every agency across the state has the same formula for the miscellaneous. It used to be that there were a bunch of formulas available, and agencies would try and improve their formula to get above the agencies nearby so that they could recruit people away from them. It caused benefits to keep going up, and then they would lower their contribution rates. You can't do any of that anymore. So under the PEPRA, employee contribution rates are basically half the normal cost. Remember, normal cost is the cost to pay each year of service. And you pay to catch up. So CalPERS gives small agencies 2 reports, one for their classic members and one for the PEPRA members. Your PEPRA benefits are pretty close, or 90-something, close to 100% funded. It's only been since 2013. It's, and you're paying normal costs, things are going relatively well, their investment returns, bad year, but on average, they're average. So they're doing okay. The miscellaneous is where you're at 70-something%. Most of your employees are still in the miscellaneous. Most of your liabilities, all your retirees are still in the miscellaneous plan. You have an unfunded liability here in dollar amounts.
6.3.
Is $6.3 million. So a bigger liability, unfunded liability, you're $6.3 million behind target. And so it's a question of, and your pension contributions are much bigger than your retiree health contributions. So this is a bigger question. Many agencies across the state are taking a couple of different approaches. I actually did a webinar on this earlier today before House and Play. One thing they're doing is they're, in the years when things are good, when you have money, just putting extra money into the pension fund. Just doing that, taking steps in that direction, absolutely helps. In the short term, and in fact, I'm making a plan, I'm having a meeting setting up with the city of Milpitas coming up in a few weeks. They have short-term goals. They're trying to get to 80% in the next 3 years. And then in the 10 years after that, go from 80 to 95 and try and get themselves to a place where they've gotten this out, there. It's, considering the magnitude of this, it's usually good to set short-term goals and then medium and longer-term goals and try and get there. Because each year, as you were saying before, things are going to happen. They're not going to hit the targets. The last couple of years, last year they beat their investments, beat the market, but not that much. The year before they did pretty well. This year, markets are not going all that well. And that's the biggest thing, having an impact. That and the fact that they're getting a little more conservative each year with their assumptions, but they're probably going to hold at 7% return rate for a while.
Well, actually, I'm sorry, the markets were doing phenomenal until recently.
Yeah, and they gave it all back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, now that the election's over, it may settle down for the end of the year, we'll see. I'm not betting it.
I'm pretty sure they either will or they won't. But I don't.
You're smart. I bet you're right.
So, but CalPERS looks at this every single year. And we, part of the reason we built the software to help, where we match all CalPERS methodologies, is to help agencies run through a bunch of different scenarios and say, what if they average a little less for a long period of time? What if they have one big down again and then things go back to normal? What can we do to get things under control? How do we plan better so we know what is supposed to be, what we need to put aside each year and have money set aside?
So can we get a similar to page 14 for the pensions? I mean, I understand we're working on GovInvest. It's new software for us. And these actuary numbers take a lot of time to put together, but I'd like to see a schedule.
We can do a quick analysis based on the information in the reports. We can do something quick and rough. And then once we have you on the software, then you'll either have the ability to run it or we can help you run it and then come back.
Yeah, because I'd like to have a couple of scenarios where we're doing the same as you suggested, which is we're at 70, let's get to 80 in X years, let's get to 90, and, you know, well, I mean, you know, we have to do the old math, say, done in a 5-year plan, you know, because nobody knows what's going to happen in 10 years, but you make small jumps with the hopes of making larger jumps later.
Right, and the other thing that when you start making that plan, one of the things that I will suggest with the retiree health company, the OPEB, with the OPEB, you are in control of the OPEB funding. It's all you, it's all your board. So if you get to a place where you put too much money away, you can lower it down and get back to being at target. On the pension side, because the PEPR rules,
Right, it's all
it's all CalPERS, and on top of that, the PEPR law basically says if you get, if they want to stop what the mistake that was made before. So when you're over 100% funded, you still have to contribute the normal cost, even though that's more than you need to. So if we get over 100% funded and things keep going well, you'll go to 120% funded, 150%.
We'll worry about that.
Right. So my recommendation for most agencies, as you're setting a target, is to set something in the high 90s rather than 100. Give yourself so that you don't put money into places that
Do
you
we
can't
have a
use.
projection in here for how much we have to pay in future years? So
No.
it comes right out of there.
Out of these, there are numbers in here for the next 5 years in the CalPERS reports.
Do we have them in here?
I don't think we put them, they're not in the GASB 68 report, and we didn't talk about putting it there because it's the, you know, it's all the CalPERS stuff. So we can put together a forecast of what CalPERS is asking for. We can do a very quick sort of simulation of what CalPERS calls a fresh start. CalPERS, on the OPEB plan, we have a simple amortization where all your unfunded liability is all basically paid off. You know, whatever you have, it's over 19 years now, then 18, then 17, then 16, and 15. For CalPERS, each year when you're off target, they take the new amount for off target and they spread that over a new period of time. This one's over 30, this one's over 20. So you have probably 15 different bases built in. They have a method that they call fresh start, where you basically lump them all together, take a period, and pay what's all these that are here right now over a certain period. So we can simulate a fresh start very easily for you and tell you how much it would cost to say if you want to get to 100% in 15 years versus 12 versus 20, what that would be if things match the assumptions. So that's a place to start.
I think we'd like that.
Yeah, and I agree with your advice to get up into, you know, the 95% area.
Yeah.
Because, yeah, I understand, if you overpay them, they thank you very much, and
then the money's there.
And they triple your.
I was fortunate enough to be chair of the City of Piedmont's Police and Fire Retirement Board when the stock market shot through the roof. So when I started as chair, we were 80% funded. When I finished, we were 210%. That was the markets. They think it's me. I'll let them.
He's a genius.
We could not use any of the money. Okay, it was money that was in there and could not be used for anything else for the city. So, yeah, and they didn't want to get, they had no reason to get bigger benefits. They had no trouble recruiting. So it was wasted money.
Well, what are they funded now?
I haven't asked.
Pretty high?
They're pretty good. They're over 100% funded.
They're still over 100%.
They're still over 100% funded. Yeah, no, I
But they still have to make the same
But they still have to
required
do normal
CalPERS and like, so it's real, I mean, does that money accrue for them, or is it just wasted?
Well, it goes into the plan, and actually they split out, they created a new plan so that the plan is now 100-something, 150% funded.
So if we get to the point where we're at 95%, we could open up a trust fund and put money in that.
There are all sorts of different options and nuances we can talk about. What's called the Section 115 trust. So you don't give it directly to CalPERS, you put it someplace else.
But you hold it and it's
You
reserved
hold
for
it,
that.
it has to be used for that purpose, you can't put it back into
But
reserve.
you got a great example. You were over 200%. They've done well, and now they're 150. So if we get to 100%, you know, that's no guarantee 10 years down the line. You know, If we get to 200%, yeah, that's probably too much. So we would like, I believe, this board, would love to have a fresh start, new plan, and some scenarios that are great.
Doable.
Yeah, and then we could check in our budget. We definitely, we have to fund at least what CalPERS tells us,
Yeah,
and we would do that.
and I'd also say, Ira, you saw the gentleman introduce himself, I believe. We made it very clear at the finance committee to the person doing our rate study that we wanted,
Yeah.
we wanted to be absolutely clear in the rate study with the public that we have X OPEB and X pension liability, and part of the, yes, as people said, yes, part of this increase is going to be going to that, and we'll determine in the rate study, and then we will have some.
And then how many years will the plan is to pay it?
Yeah.
off?
So we're going to have a rate, we don't want to raise the rates too much, but we may have a portion of our rate increase purely dedicated to paying off our pension and OPEB liability, unfunded liability.
And, yeah, so, when Mark gets around to it, have a.
So this
I've
gas-
actually, I've known Mark for a while for non-work related.
And Steve, you'll make sure that they talk.
Oh, yeah, I hear you loud and clear.
Okay.
So I have a question. Is the discount rate the assumed average rate of return?
Yeah.
And so it's, you know, on our page 5 of our report, which I don't think you have, but they talk about global equity as 47%. I assume that adds up to our assets, are 47% in global equity and things like that. And if I multiply the assumed asset allocation times the rate of return, I get a rate of return that's got to average less than 4%.
This is the real rate of return.
Yes?
Okay, which is the rate of return in excess of inflation.
Why do we do that?
They do that because then they, and this
So I'm at about 2.8%.
2.7, the 2.75 is a long-term inflation assumption right now. And if you take a look at market returns over time, the different classes of investments, so they're showing different classes of investments.
Exactly.
Their returns tend to be, right, they beat inflation by certain amounts. You know, some of them barely beat inflation at all. The whole concept of fixed income, highly liquid fixed income, highly secure government, short-term government, is basically supposed to match inflation, give or take a tiny bit. As you start getting a little more aggressive with your investments, the global equities, and CalPERS CalPERS, because they have to have almost $500 billion of investments, so maybe 400 billion at this point. They have some of the best investment people working for them, and the part of the tough thing that they have for them is anything they do moves the market. They are the market. So they need to make sure that their money is all in the best place. And at best, if they're doing a great job, every one of their asset classes beats the market by a little bit, and then they do okay. But they're never gonna, if the world economy is doing great, they will do great. If the world economy is doing badly, they will do badly. If sectors are not doing well, they'll move stuff around. They have a pretty good feel for what's happening with that. But this is what they're doing. And the other thing that this table shows, if you look at it carefully, is that their expectations for the next decade for investment returns are lower than they are for the long term after that. They expect to earn 7% over the life of your pension liabilities over the next 30, 50 years. They expect to earn a little closer to 6 over the next decade. So they don't expect things to be great. They don't expect them to be awful, but they don't expect them to be great.
America's not going to be great again?
Steady Eddie.
And so yeah, Yeah, so having a plan in place that's prepared for a slightly lower return than what CalPERS is doing for the next few years, maybe a smart move. And to make sure you got that. If you get through the next 7 or 8 years, then, yeah, things will start picking up again. We'll be living in the 90s all over again. Everything will be great. And, yeah, we can start wearing whatever we wore back then.
Well,
Yeah,
Eric?
we still wear that.
This time you did a great job as an actuarial because I didn't get an answer to my question. But the other time I did. So you did your job as a,
Okay,
As
yeah,
a-
no,
good job.
as an actuary, we are trained to answer questions either by saying yes and no, or it depends. Those are basically the two options. So,
I thought it was just a long explanation with lots of numbers.
yeah,
And then you would have to say yes or no.
yeah, but these numbers do not come out to 7 because they don't include inflation. But they do come out to, when you add inflation in, they do come out a little higher than 7.
Okay. So, any further questions of the board? What we want to do here, I think, is accept the defined pension valuation report and request a, what do you call that?
A study of a fresh start, and let us know what different time periods you want to see.
Some alternatives.
Yeah,
When we have the new software, we should be able to do,
Yes,
Once all the numbers are
Yes.
plugged in, yeah.
we can play what-if games.
yes.
Yeah. So I would move to accept the district's defined benefit pension plan evaluation report completed in accordance with GASB 68 and direct staff to work with Ira Summer to put together a fresh start plan and to get our, to get our Cal Invest program, GovInvest program fully input so that we can start looking at alternatives as we go forward.
Yeah, looking at funding alternatives to reduce our pension liability.
Good. Thanks for the milk.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye. Thank you, Ira.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
That was really good, thank you very much.
I think that
Thanks for
governance
traveling.
idea is a
Yeah.
terrific,
We'll be talking soon, okay?
it's a terrific tool for public agencies. Thank you very much. Okay. Now, where are we on this?
We're on back to standing committees
Now we
report
come
out.
back to
Right here.
standing
Okay,
committees.
so we're agenda item 8.
They go into these consent first.
We need a little break for a second.
No, consent is after that.
Okay, standing committee reports. A, Finance Committee.
So I'll do CMSA and do finance.
Okay, I'll do the Finance Committee. Finance Committee really reviewed a lot of the things that we've already talked about at times. It's spent a lot of time on 13 and 14. I think we confused ourselves then.
No.
I think
Oh, good.
I think we cleared it up in this agenda item. We looked at internal financial statements and a few other things. It basically,
We also talked about the possibility, and so probably we should talk about that now. Because of the number of contracts we have and because of the fact that we have a report on legal every month, that it may be wise for us to talk about legal costs under the protection of lawyer-client privilege and not to put it in the packet every month. Although we love dragging Andrea through the mud. We sometimes find ourselves maybe risking certain lawyer-client privilege exemptions by putting in costs of certain projects on that.
Did the finance committee come up with that on their own? Or did you?
yeah.
Okay. Sounded like something Andrea would put on there.
No, I mean, my perspective on it is that I look at the legal report and sometimes neutralize the language so that the public doesn't know, oh my gosh, there's a problem at X address. right? But that's the kind of attorney-client waiver stuff that makes me, so I've modified it a little bit.
But I think what we said is we like the detail, but we don't necessarily need to have it in the packet.
What we said too was that we've set a budget for legal. And as long as we're, we approved an annual expense for legal, and as long as we're within that budget, it's
Right.
just like everything else. It's like our IT person and all. If we're under budget, then there's no problem.
Right.
If it goes over budget, we take a look at it.
I think that's a wonderful sign of the times, because there was a long time where we wanted to watch it because things were going crazy.
I still want to watch it, but I just don't want to
And the
watch it
same-
in the packet.
The same with HR. Remember?
Yeah.
It was an area we really wanted to review, and so we reviewed it for a long time. It's come way down. Our staff has been most of it.
Right.
And so we don't.
Right.
I would say this is a lot like when I, in my business, talk to people about inventory on their food items. If you have a real problem with shrimp, you track it every day, and when shrimp's under control, you put it back into the monthly. You don't need to track it every day anymore. If you have a problem, you address it. So, right, it's under budget.
Old shrimp?
Tracking your usage over so you put it back on the
Great,
shelf.
all right.
Okay, so B is Central Marin Sanitation Agency.
So,
I'll start off. Well, there were a bunch of good items over there.
There's one in particular.
Sewer use ordinance, there were some changes that needed to be made. This is done once every number of years, it hadn't been done in a while. And rather than just do the recommended changes, staff at CMSA went through it and really revised the whole thing, all the language to make it consistent, and a number of other things. It turned out, it looks like it's a much more usable document for the future. We went through with the auditor, financial statements, and that all looked
clean and good.
clean and good. There was nothing special there. The financial policies manual, just some changes to that, and they're looking at our new policy manual that we did, and Jason is going to pick and choose out of that, and thank you, Felicia, for that manual. And the main thing was the Larkspur membership in the CMSA Joint Powers Agreement, which has been there for a long time, and it's the way we've been feeling about it is it's kind of a vestigial organ that Larkspur really didn't need to be there anymore, in the same way that San Anselmo doesn't need representation and Fairfax doesn't need representation.
And Ross.
And Ross, that we represent the entire Ross Valley from one end to the other, including Larkspur. And their board, their city council got together last week, or 2 weeks ago, and that was going to be their recommendation. And although we haven't seen their official recommendation, Dan Hilmer has not been at the last 2 meetings representing Larkspur, so we're assuming that they probably are going to formally withdraw.
Let me join on this and point out that part of our report out, 3 of us attended the Larkspur City Council meeting where they faced an issue of possible liability on our pension obligation due to a new state law. It's very small. Frankly, it doesn't really matter to me why they put this on the agenda. All 5 members of the Larkspur City Council spoke in favor of withdrawing from CMSA. So they've directed the town manager to work with Jason Dow to do just that. So last night at the meeting, there was a request from Mary Beth Bushy to ensure that our CMSA attorney looked at it, which was fine. And also a request from the chair, Diane First, which I'm not sure will follow that because it was a suggestion, and it's also her last night. She's not coming back. She's been replaced by Eli Beckman. To have a subcommittee, and you know, I didn't think it was helpful at last night's meeting to, you know, we've been the ones kind of advocating for this, and frankly, it is absolutely my belief it is our pressure on Larkspur that caused them to find this avenue to withdraw.
So she wanted a subcommittee
To look into all of the, there's nothing to look into. They don't,
Wait a minute, they told us when I was on the board, that's 100% between.
yes, they did. Yeah. Well, that's correct. The only issue is they want to make sure there's nothing they're missing that they're going to be liable for. But I can tell you that, for example, Dan Schwartz, who has been, I've had more than one person tell me that Dan Schwartz is the smartest of the Marin County town managers, and I have a lot of respect for the Marin County town managers. When he was reporting to his own board, and they said, what do we owe, or he said, nothing. We don't owe them anything, we don't bill them anything, they don't bill us anything, we attend their meetings. When we leave, we leave. And I've spoken to Jason about this in the past. He's going to reopen his Word copy of the new JPA agreement. He's going to remove about 10 lines, he's going to save it, and we're done. We'll have to re-sign the new one. There's nothing. So that's why I say I'm not really sure I see the need for a subcommittee. I think we can talk about it in 5 minutes, but there's a little foot dragging. Two of the agencies may want to drag this out and drag it. It doesn't matter because Larkspur's not there anymore.
And so did CMSA vote on it, or was there any?
There's nothing for
We gave them
CMSA.
direction.
Okay.
We gave Jason direction
We
to
haven't
work.
received anything
But
yet.
there's,
To amend the JPA.
but Mary, there is nothing for the
Right.
CMSA to vote on. It's up to the JPA members,
Yeah,
of which CMSA is not one of the
That's
JPA
right.
members.
that's correct. So
So,
when we get that letter, we should probably put it immediately on the agenda and direct the general manager to immediately accept that and wish them fond farewell, as they say in court. I'd like to thank and dismiss, and that's all there is to it.
I think that's just remarkable.
I'm very pleased with
As
that.
I said, I didn't open the email when it came out because I didn't know exactly what I wanted to say, but it fundamentally changes the power structure, right? Now there are going to be 5 votes and we're going to be 2 of 5. And yeah, congratulations to anybody who worked on that at any point. And I believe you that it doesn't actually have to do with the last little thing that happened.
They raised it
But
in the
yeah, wow. I mean, what are
Yeah,
Greg worked on
I don't
it,
think-
and we came at that from so many different angles, from
I
a
don't
good governance angle, and
I don't think they wanted to have a joint meeting. I really don't.
I'm a little hurt.
They never responded to our letter, did they?
I don't know if we want to have a joint meeting.
I did.
We have one. Actually, surprisingly enough, is not going to change the basic structure of that governing board in any way.
No, I don't think so.
For example, when we were the bad boy district, or the bad girl district, it was 4-2.
Right.
If we go back to regress to being the bad boy district, it's 3-2.
Yeah, it's not gonna make any difference.
Right, no, that's true.
And we're not gonna go back to being the bad boy district.
No.
This board has changed everything, and those days are gone. And you know what? I think all of us, I hope, would agree that this board and the then general manager were fundamentally disservicing this district and this community by what they were doing, by suing people and suing other agencies. And yeah, the previous.
The previous.
Right.
Correct, yes.
We know.
And so that was a bad board, and people had every right to be angry at this board of directors.
Right. But also, I hear what you're saying. I hear what you're saying, that because we're all sort of rational people at the table, that it's not going to change that much. On the other hand, given the proportion of sewage that we put into that plant, and I mean, it's more about how much attention you and Michael and Doug are paying to what they're doing and going to the finance committee. That's changed it too. But I just like that we now seem to have more of a proportional representation.
It wins the good governance
Yes.
seal.
Yes, and we can write, oh, I can't wait to write to the grand jury and LAFCO, right?
Yeah.
They both have said that should change.
That's right.
So I don't feel so bad because I was the only one that voted no.
And you
I
voted,
was the only one that voted no.
And-
Oh, my mother would be proud of me.
why did you vote no?
Because that person
Good
needed to
governance.
go. He needed to go.
You know,
Yeah.
and you, but
And
it
the
was not,
LAFCO and the grand jury.
Yeah.
yeah, but your statement was, is that it's, for good governance, you voted no.
Right,
That's
and
exactly right.
that was it.
Okay.
All right. Wow, that was an exciting CMSA.
Okay, so that's, CMSA, the next one is North Bay Watershed.
Everybody's talking about it. I went to a big party Sunday. Everybody's like, did you hear about the Larkspur Seat? I'm like, yeah. I said, God works in mysterious ways.
Well, the IJ made it look like they were withdrawing from CMSA and where are they gonna get their effluent treated?
Oh, I didn't see that.
More sewage in the bay.
Yeah, anyway, let's move on.
Okay, let's go to C North Bay.
Is it me?
Yeah.
I made a list of the 23 agencies that belong to North Bay. I don't know if any of you, I mean, it's a pretty amazing, powerful group of agencies. So we did our part 2 of our strategic plan. It was a lot of fun, I have to say. And I got to work with Damon Conley at my table. And it was really good to meet other people from other agencies to see where they're at and being very creative. So they asked us to project out if we thought, where would we really like to see the agency to go? And so by the way, in here, you can see, Michael, there's a picture of you in here. It's fun. So you can look through the notes. But it kind of shows you the process. We had one big, like butcher paper on the wall, and we wrote certain things. And so basically, some of the areas of the direction of the strategic plan are needing more funding, more education, and more success stories, and that includes everything else they're doing. And so they're doing a five-year plan. Secondly, I went to the Joint Technical Committee at North Bay. It's an ad hoc that meets every 2 to 3 months. And they're more geared at big grants, and they all meet together from all these different regions. And so they talked about the AA prop money. That's $20 million every year for 25 years. And so they're trying to divide it up for the North Bay $5 million, the West Bay $5 million, South Bay $12 million. So I think we really, Steve and I'd really like to chat with you and Felicia. We don't have any projects. We've never done any projects. There's a ton of money out there right now. And these partnerships, they're really starting to give more money to, because they feel that you're working together. One of them, like, is Rio. That's one of the things that they're doing. And
What's the source of the money? What is it called?
the Prop AA money.
Oh, Prop.
Measure $12 per person.
There's also, let's see, so anyway, it's very creative, amazing people from all these different regions. I just think we could do something different, exciting maybe. And that's sort of it in a nutshell.
Sounds good. We will meet and talk about how our agency plugs in.
Yeah, I think we could
We
do a lot.
discussed that a little bit, didn't we? And it was, the best is to, like you said, have a joint project with a number of agencies. You do much better. Yeah. Excellent.
Great.
Did your committee meet, the ad hoc committee? No. Okay. Verbal reports by board members and staff and requests for future items. Michael, do you have any? No.
Good, thank you.
No. Well, we did discuss the Larkspur already.
Yes.
Mary? Okay,
Well, this is something I keep bringing up over and over and over, but I'm trying to coordinate or figure out a way where the board, when you have like big things happen at CMSA, how can we meet as a board to give some feedback before you go to the meeting? Can I finish?
Yeah, but I addressed it.
You addressed it?
Yes. No, I mean, yeah, I addressed it at the CMSA meeting.
Okay, but I'm talking here because,
We have a plan.
okay, that's good. But what I'm saying is, I'm not saying that you're bad representatives. What I'm thinking though is, I got flack from the community hearing about Jason's salary, and I didn't know about it until I read it in the newspaper, and we did not talk about that, and we're giving them how much money a year? I forgot how many millions, but I'm just trying to make the governance be a little bit, I'm not saying everything you do has to be talked about here, but I imagine if they're gonna have a new bond coming out or whatever, you brought it up, is what you're saying.
Okay, so I brought it up
Well,
at the last CMSA meeting.
But, okay.
I brought it up at the last CMSA meeting.
The what?
The boards are, our board meets after their board meets, and so we can't give direction to our own staff, our own members. So what Jason is going to do, because he does know in advance most of the agenda, things change in order, and sometimes something's thrown at the last minute, but he does have an idea of the agenda. So he's going to work with our general manager and give him a heads up on all of the agenda items well in advance of the meeting, so that we'll know on this board what's coming up before that. So that's what I did.
Thank you, Deb.
Okay.
also, just pointing out that, like, Jason's salary is not hidden anywhere, and it's on the website, it's a public knowledge thing, and it was brought up because in the first time in, how many, 30 years, 20 years, the board said, hey, maybe the stipend is, we should look at it, and they brought it up to a meeting. Now, they didn't do it in one meeting, and we actually did discuss it here, because it was 2 meetings and 3 consecutive days in the IJ that was discussed. And so the fact that it was a surprise, it shouldn't have been, because actually we discussed it in one of the CMSA reports here before it happened, because we made a decision at CMSA that we wouldn't do anything in that way at one meeting. We would always have it where we talked about it in one and then approved it in the next one. So it actually was discussed here, and it should have been.
If you got the minutes, I'd love to see them.
The minutes here.
The minutes for our discussion, because I don't remember that. But just let me know what month, and I'll look it up.
If the board members would like, I think, I know the meetings that Michael's talking about, and I can redistribute those. Where the general managers review.
I don't think you need to redistribute them. If you just give us the date, and that way, if any
Yeah.
interested board members can go look at the video.
Yeah, Julia, you'll make it a.
Because it's not going to be in the, it's not going to be in the meeting notes. It's going to say, the meeting notes are going to say, Michael gave a report on CMSA, Pam gave him a report on, you know, they're not detailed, they're not supposed to be. If somebody wants to, they can just go look at the video.
Right.
Just all we need is the date.
Fair enough.
But it was discussed over 2 meetings and 3 consecutive days in the IJ.
I do recall this.
Well, I think, Michael, I think it's a fair point. It's not that she doesn't want to be reading about it in the IJ. She wants us to be involved, and I remember talking about it here also, so I remember both. I remember both of those things. And then also, I would say, it goes back to my point, that now that we're 2/5 of the board, we may not feel like the CMSA agenda and decisions about salaries, et cetera, are a runaway train that we don't have much control over. You know, it's Jason's salaries and bonus and that sort of thing have always felt to me like we really had no influence to curb them.
Well, I'm going to disagree with that one, because starting several years ago when Tom and I were on the board over at CMSA, we started using the same methodology that we developed here at CMSA. With the same review that we used for our GM here, and that was adopted over there. So yes, it used to be, but I think that we did have influence.
Also, the salary is just starting from a higher bar, right? You're not going to dock his salary. So I guess that's where I get the sort of like...
You know, actually, what to take out of this is that it is a good idea to know what CMSA is going to do.
Yeah.
And so then we can, you know, tell our representatives how we feel and how they can vote on things. And so with that, my verbal report is that Michael and I are on the finance committee of CMSA, 2 of 3 on the finance committee, and they got a report from their financial advisor that interest rates are going to go up. And so let's sell bonds now. And that's really not what I was thinking we were going to do in the 5-year plan, because you sell bonds early and don't use the money, you know, because we don't need, it isn't needed right now. And so you sell the bonds and you pay 3.5%, 4%, something like that, and you earn 1.5%. So you're losing money on the deal. And so, in essence, instead of selling bonds early in next fiscal year, I think we postponed that. And so that's something that.
I'm glad to hear about that, and
Yeah.
if anybody should be watching that, it's you, I'm glad to hear.
So we are 2/3 of the finance committee, so we're 100% on that.
And so, are you going to, is he going to say sell bonds early?
No.
Okay, great.
Who's the third?
Dan Judah,
Yeah, Dean.
And even Jason agreed, because now we're going to apply for SRF loans, which is what
That's
we
what I was
want to do
saying,
here.
everybody.
Anyway,
All right.
so item 10 is consent calendars.
I'm sorry, Director, Board President.
Excuse me, yeah. Staff and advisors.
I only have 2 items, and one, of course, is to introduce our new general manager to the staff table here. This is his first board meeting. We've really been working well together over the last couple of days, and I'll be giving most of the reports tonight. I know we've already done a couple of them, but Steve would like to give at least one of the reports, so we're looking forward to, handing the baton over to him at one point in the evening. And then the other item for verbal reports by staff is that our newly appointed clerk of the board, Julia McKenty, recently attended a CSBA clerk conference, and she is here to report out on it.
Thank you, Felicia, and the board for a moment to report on my experience at the CSDA Board Secretary Clerk Conference, where in October I represented the district as a first-time attendee. I learned valuable information about Brown Act requirements and Public Records Act requests. There are new updates in state law regarding records retention for digital files like texts and emails. I enjoyed meeting people from around the state and receiving specialized training. Thank you again for allowing me to attend, and I look forward to next year's conference.
Can I ask a question about that since you brought it up, and I'd ask our counsel. I don't delete any emails that I send, but there's some government ones that are just like something.gov. I delete those. It's some email that's sent generically to some people who are on public boards. Is there any issue there?
I don't have an issue with you deleting emails that are not relevant to district business. I'm even okay with deleting a few emails relevant, but not we don't have our records retention policy doesn't go into the level of detail of what kinds of emails can the board members delete.
If it's something that's sent to me that is not relevant and I don't respond back, I feel like I can delete it. I'm just telling you, my policy is I'm not deleting anything other than that.
It's my understanding that even if we delete it out of our inbox, it is backed up and retained out in their cloud, so that nothing is ever really deleted. So delete whatever you want, because they can go get it if necessary.
Actually,
Unless it's coming from a personal email or personal phone account, in
which you
which
shouldn't do.
you should not do, but in the case that you do, those are
Discoverable.
discoverable.
They become government record.
Yes, so they're government record, and they would need to be deleted and retained according to the district's schedule, which we will be updating and working on early in 2019.
Okay.
Thank you.
That's great.
Is there any other staff reports?
No, for verbal reports that conclude tonight.
Okay. Are any other from staff? Okay, thanks. I did attend, met the people from Ranger Pipeline, and they're gonna pipe burst right through Ross Common tomorrow, starting at 7 o'clock, and it's on the playing field.
Starting 7 o'clock when?
In the morning. They said they're gonna start tomorrow at 7 o'clock in the morning,
Wow.
take about 2 hours, they said. And it's really interesting to see, because it's a 21-inch pipe, 24-inch pipe.
It's been sitting out in the middle of the field there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess the
I
arborist,
want you down there for a PR.
Photo shoot, photo
Okay.
op.
No, consent calendar. Would anybody like to remove any items from the consent calendar?
I think we should remove F.
F is, okay. Any other? Okay.
I move we do A through G with the exception of F.
Second.
Any discussion? Audience, staff, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. So F,
I just wanted to bring this up because this was a, just for the record, this was a woman who lives at 7 Sunrise Lane in Larkspur and has been paying religiously her Lost Valley Sanitary sewer charges since 1990, except turns out because of an inspection of her neighbor's lateral, which she shares, she's not actually our customer and never has been. There's a differential rate between Lost Valley Sanitary and Corte Madera, and there was also a differential between Larkspur and Corte Madera. So she's asking for a refund that goes back to when she essentially got the house. We only law requires us to go back 180 days. Our policy is to go back 3 years, but we're asking, this report is asking for us to essentially make her whole, with the exception that from 1991 to 1993, she was paying Larkspur, and Larkspur was not part of the Lost Valley Sanitary, so we're not interested in offering her money that we didn't get. At this time, as I understand from our financial meeting, Corte Madera is not looking for reimbursement from us. We've given them some training on certain things, and so they're playing nice in that sort of kind. So I would move that we do approve the amount of $1,312 as an additional supplemental refund to make Miss Julia Earle as whole as we can.
Second.
I thought you were pulling it because you opposed it.
No. It seemed kind of chunky, changey.
I know.
But I wanted to put it on the record as to why,
Excuse me, President Gaffney, what was the motion and second for the original consent calendar?
He motioned and I seconded A through G, but not F.
Right, okay, thank you very much.
And then I'm moving to approve a request for supplemental sewer service charge refund to Ms. Julia Earle of 7 Sunrise Lane, Larkspur, in the amount of $1,312.
Second.
any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, passes. Thank you. We've done 11, 12. Consideration of authorizing staff to issue notice of inviting bids and file a notice of exemption for construction of large diameter gravity sewer project 2-3B Lower Shady Lane, Poplar Ave, project in fiscal year 18-19 annual budget. So we had a good discussion on this one in the finance committee as well.
Yes, we did. One of the first things that staff would like to point out to the board is that the item tonight under consideration would not include the filing of the notice of exemption. We haven't yet fully made an environmental determination for this item. So when we get to the conclusion of the motion by the board, we'd ask that consideration of authorizing staff to issue a notice of inviting bids and et cetera, not include to file a notice of exemption. That said, this project is the second part of a two-part project consisting of the Lower Shady and Poplar 2-3B, connecting actually to the project that's starting in pipe bursting at the Roscommon tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. for Tom's report out. The project was originally planned for construction in summer 2019, following the completion of the first part of the second part project. I apologize for our nomenclature here. The large diameter gravity sewer 2-1 and 2-2 are completed or near completion, and the 2-3A project is also nearly completed. So this final project is going to connect all of these. Now, if the board remembers, this was part of a project that we actually rejected this bid back in February of 2018, which prompted us to separate them into individual projects, and members of the Finance Committee may like to elaborate on that, the benefits of doing just that. I would add that part of the motion that the staff is requesting today is to amend the current fiscal year budget to reallocate $1.5 million from 2 projects that we don't think will be needing that amount of money for, specifically the Kerner building remodel. You know, we don't think we're going to be investing $1 million into this property, nor do we think we'll be investing $1 million plus into Larksville Landing property. So it's appropriate, staff recommends reallocating $1.5 million for the current fiscal year budget into this project. This project's total budget, the engineer's estimate, is $5.2 million. So if we allocate $1.5 million in this fiscal year, we will be encumbering $3.8 million, or approximate that, depending on what the bids come in at for next fiscal year. I believe we have some new handouts, Julia, for the budget approved and proposed. I apologize, the original packet budget schedules did not print as expected. There are some highlighted sections of the budget, Schedule 9, Schedule 10, and Schedule 11, that we may like to refer to during the discussion. So Julie is handing you a revised, approved and proposed schedules, basically highlighting the Kerner and the Larksville Landing projects, where we're recommending that we reallocate that money. The sewer improvement project budget in the fiscal year 1920 forecast, and other capital projects and gravity sewer improvements in the current fiscal year budget. So that concludes the report. Oh, and it's also actually in Schedule 10, a new project number, large diameter gravity sewer rehabilitation project 2-3B. The OSO element. Not just yet, but potentially in a little bit. That will be allocated, like I said earlier, to $1.5 million for this fiscal year. So Catherine, of course, is here to answer any questions about the scope of the construction work, and I'd be happy to discuss the fiscal impacts of the notice of inviting bids.
Well, this came up in the financial committee meeting, and yes, we had bids that were 225% of projected bids back in February, and we moved through the bids. We split it in half, and then the first one came back at 108% of budget. So we saved considerable amount of money on that. This is a $5.2 million project, but it's also critically important because it ties into all of the other projects we made, and this is a critical infrastructure that is in very poor shape. So it's important that we get this done. We have to get this done by our agreement on our CMSA permit and PDS permit, thank you, and it needs to be completed by February of 2020. However, it is swappable. It is possible that we swap some other projects, and for that reason, I suggested, and we don't know if this will be of any interest, but we suggested that rather than put a current limit, that when the bid goes out, the bid can say something to the effect of, it needs to be completed by December of 2019, or would you like to offer us a suggestion by finishing it by December of 2020? Because sometimes when you give people more time, they might have a better price. So we're thinking of throwing that in, and maybe something will come of that, maybe it won't. But we also asked to ensure that the bid goes out as far and wide as we can, because with the wildfires, there's construction going all over the state, and construction companies are making hay. I mean, I'm a capitalist, God bless them, but it's not the construction costs are going up because people are getting rich. Construction costs are going up because people are driving really nice cars. So this is going to be, you know, we'll see where it comes at. Our bid suggestion is $5.2 million.
I have some questions when you're ready.
Okay, good. Pamela?
Catherine?
Yes.
So, how many urgent projects do we have left in the district?
Aha, we have the NPDS permit list of projects.
I think she's doing the structural ones.
Yes.
The urgent large diameter.
The 911 ones.
No, this is a priority, not an urgent. It was a do it in 1 to 5 years. For the large diameter, there were 3 segments of pipe that had kind of ovaled or crushed enough that they could collapse. You know, it was a really advanced stage. They were starting to collapse.
And did we already replace
And we
those?
already fixed those. Yeah, we did, I forget if it was an official emergency, we did a change order with an existing construction contract to do those urgent repairs. I think it was about 550.
Okay, so we don't have a bunch of urgent projects that are not in this pile?
No.
Okay, that's one of my little nervous things. So the budget, this financial schedule is a forecast, right?
Right.
So, do you really think we could do that much work by what is it, December of 20?
February of 2020.
Well,
It's
it's actually, our permit is for 5 years, and this project is scheduled for 2020. But the permit will allow us to move projects around. We have a list that we have to complete, but the schedule isn't, you know, there's wiggle room within the schedule. But this is the list of projects that we promised the state we do.
So,
The large diameter, if you're sort of talking about like how much one project would spend.
well, I'm talking about what's on here.
All of it.
Yeah, because remember at that time, I don't know if you were there, then when we combined a bunch of projects together, Greg was here, and it didn't work out. And so we had to redo some of the bid. You remember, you were here, Steve.
This is the
And
end
so
of that road.
I'm a little nervous seeing, because it did not work out well, and we had to rebid, it just messed it all up. So just your 2 cents, do you think this is too aggressive? Is it too complicated? What would you like to see different? So I don't mean to put you on the spot.
Well, so we worked with the engineer to add alternatives for the lining because we didn't want to constrain it. We wanted as wide of a possible, you know, subcontract for that. And that's what you want to do, is not have a lot of subcontract work. So this project has a lot of open cut because it's now changed where it's primarily open cut in the lower shady. It's open cut in poplar. So I think it'll be attractive to a lot of the open cut contractors, and then we've left a broader range of subs that could do it because we're allowing fold and form, and CIPP and different methods. So we're trying to leave it as open as we can to try and make it more attractive for that. So yeah, the balance of the open cut and the sub work is something that we definitely look at and try to manage.
Okay, and there's a person that's a project manager on this too?
Yes.
And is that for all of these, or are you going to divide them up?
I'm sorry, for internally at the district, or?
Yes.
We've formally had Andrew Clow early on, the project manager. I've been working these projects, 3 series projects, and we've recently tapped Justin Seufert, who's doing the construction management, to also provide some project management services. So he would be doing 3A, which is the one that's under construction out of Roscommon, and this one, 3B. Construction management and project management, you know, in terms of staff reports and invoice checking and all of those things.
Okay, and are we using NV5 for communications for the neighborhoods and all that?
We have been for some of the blasts and for preparations on the 3A, yes.
Okay.
And the sign design and things like that.
Okay, because you know what Fairfax. Okay, that's all, thank you.
Thank you. Any other? Okay, well, I have some comments. this is a key project, and we have to do it. So, I think we need to go out for bids and all that. But what we talked about in the Finance Committee is that we did not approve, well, we did a 5-year financial forecast. We definitely, the Finance Committee wants to review this prior to our rate study. And I'm hoping that we can get our capital costs down in the $8 million a year range. Spread some projects out. I think, we definitely have to do red projects. We have to do these NPDES permit projects within a 5-year period. We want to do that. But we have the ability to finance pay-as-you-go in the range of $7 to $8 million a year. And our projection shows borrowing every single year. And I don't want to do that. I want this board to review alternatives on that, and we will instruct our rate guy, how much we are going to pay for this in the future. I mean, we've done, what, $60 million of projects. And I think we should be able to slow this down a bit. And that's what we talked about in this committee a lot.
Are they held to the states still?
Or what?
When we travel, are we done?
No.
What is it in?
It ends in 2020, but we expect it will be renewed for another 5 years. And it's partially, in fact, Steve and I were just talking about this earlier today. There's some benefit in working with the state on continued regulation with a kind of a negotiated approach, which means the district would propose to the state our priority projects and hopefully get those projects blessed.
Beats paying fines.
What's that?
Beats paying fines.
Beats paying fines, still works on our infrastructure, but at a pace that's appropriate for our
schedule.
Yeah.
And projects that we want. We don't want to just do 5 miles of seed. We'd rather do what we need to do.
Right, that's right.
Okay. So,
It's a good time, if I could chime in, it's a good time as we review the infrastructure asset management plan, as we review the water rate, sewer rates. This is all coming together at a good time for us to then make suggestions that become commitments that we believe are sound fiscally and technically.
if we have to do borrowing, we'll review it as we do it. But I don't want to say really, okay. So, any other discussion?
No.
This is going to tear up Ross again. And I represent the whole Ross Valley.
It does have to get from point A to point B.
It does.
It sure does.
It is an impact project.
So the recommendation, what about reviewing the notice of exemption or continuing environmental review or something like that?
Well, I mean, that's inherent in any project. We always have to consider environmental review. This was put out there, but we're still considering what the right level is, and it may or may not be notice of exemption. That's why I want to give flexibility to TCO.
I move that we consider authorizing staff to issue a notice inviting bids for construction of the large diameter gravity sewer project 2-3B, Lower Shady Lane / Poplar Avenue project number 944, and amending the fiscal year 2018-19 annual budget, noticing that I've left out and file a notice of exemption.
We're not just considering it, we're doing it, right?
We're going to authorize it.
I'll second that.
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. So now, 13, 14, we're done.
15.
15.
Metrics.
Metrics.
I love them. I've never seen a report that makes me more clear about what we do and happier at the same time.
Good work.
The IJ won't publish this.
They won't publish it?
No, I'm just
They
saying.
don't publish tonight, goodness.
This is right, not positive news.
I'm being facetious.
So our flows ranged, I thought it was a 42. Our flow to CMSA ranges from 45 to 51%.
Of theirs.
Yeah. And there's a different summary. Yeah, of CMSA's total.
Right.
That would, you know, that's, again, we've said this before, that seems to be going in the correct direction. And that makes such a huge difference to our bottom line. If we can get that down, and I'm hoping that all this lateral work and all of these large projects we're doing is going to get that down, because one of the things about that issue that came up earlier, on the consent, is Corte Madera is not charging people, because I don't think they're, you know, they have some newer areas, we have some older areas, but, you know, we're doing a lot of work, and I'm not sure San Rafael's doing as much work, and I don't think Corte Madera's doing so much work, so we should be getting a lower percentage of flow to CMSA and therefore paying us.
Unless some of the brokers are fixing, we're leaking, right? We're keeping more stuff in the pipes. We're hopefully not getting I&I, but we might
Yeah,
be.
but you're right, and I understand that. You make a good point. I'm hopeful that the rain events will result in, because that's really where it comes in, is those few days when you've got, you know, 120 million gallons going there and we're plugging in 60 of it. If we got ours down to 30 million on those days, or 20 or less, that would be huge in the annual flow.
Yeah.
Yeah, this first chart shows we actually have higher I&I than our partners. Because during I&I, our percentage goes up.
Yep. Well, yeah, let's watch this one. Although, except we can pray for no rain, except for
Keep like the 18 to 1 during the really wet year. That's high.
Hey, board members, as your general manager, I thought I'd maybe introduce this guy. Just kidding, I would introduce.
Oh, yeah.
So, I'm 15, and I'll just point out, you've already dug in a little bit to some of the detail that this provides, and I want to encourage that discussion, but just give a brief introduction that this is a year-end metrics report, and this is the first time we've seen something like this. Our staff's done a diligent job of collecting data, and during the monthly reports, and coming up with metrics by which we can evaluate ourselves and tell the story to the public, our customers, and the wider region, the effects of the outputs of our program in very nicely, easily readable format. So the outputs, but also trying to answer questions about the outcomes, which you were touching on. If we invest these $60 million in the last few years, targeted toward reducing I&I, what things can we measure, what data can we collect that will demonstrate an outcome that is the goal of, whether it's the CDO or, you know, folks that are watching us and watching our performance, protecting the environment. How can we get to that? And it's very difficult. Many assumptions go into these calculations. And so, for instance, this question, how much of the rain that falls on the watershed gets into our sewer pipes? And is that increasing or decreasing? That's a very fundamental, important question that we want to answer. It's very difficult to do. But staff's taking a really good first cut at trying to quantify those outcome measures in this report, as well as the outputs. So what I'm impressed with is that nice combination of things that we can point to and say, not only, you know, what happened this year, but we go back a couple of years and what happened then. And I believe we're laying the groundwork then going forward, we can do year-over-year comparisons and really have questions, have answers ready to those questions that I described. There's many more, but they're around that flavor. We're spending the money, where are the results, right? And so I really want to commend staff on a very beautiful report, too, very readable, good use of font size. These things matter, you know? Right? I guess what I do, but and a good concise narrative. I think you all have done a great job of not overwhelming with verbiage, you know, cutting to the chase, the key message of each of the graphics, and what we're measuring, what's the trend, and so the graphic information. So also, you know, as a state water board where I used to work, we were trying to come up with this dichotomy of outputs and outcomes. And make it easy to understand and trace over time. And this gets to the transparency goal, that we want to collect the data and also set targets and report whether we meet the targets, whether it's in outputs or outcomes. And it's okay if you don't, but it's better that you come up with targets and set them. If you meet them, great, and that's a victory. Maybe you set it too low, maybe you can do better next year. Or if you didn't meet them, explain why. And there's always a good explanation. And so I think we're on the right track here. I appreciate as you started digging into the data, it's very interesting because as you point out, gee, that we're still an II contributor to CMSA, and that those are outcomes that we want to continue to track. But there is a good news story here that we've spent a lot of resources, and there are indicators of trends that are positive. And so as an engineer, I'm comfortable with the concept of index. I want it to be science-based, but it's not perfect science. And we invite a review, criticism of our assumptions, better ways to calculate these outcomes of what part of the rain goes in the sewer. That's a question people want answered, and we'll continue to refine our methods to answer those important questions.
Thank you. Sorry we jumped into it.
Sorry
I'm so excited about it.
You're gonna have to wrest the meeting back control.
Well, it's because you're a data-driven board. Decisions to be based on data.
The one that I liked a lot was page 20, where with the exception of fiscal year 16-17, where we had a lot, it really looks like the SSOs have a pattern now going down substantially. Again,
yeah, that's cool.
We did have 18,000 in 17-18 versus 2010, where it was 2,998,000, 13.
One of those big blue dots is my house,
Well, that was eco-terrorism.
Wasn't that in your backyard?
No, it was in our downstairs.
In your downstairs?
Shooting out of the toilet.
Was that 10 and 11?
Yeah, it was December 31st, 2010. No, I'm sorry, it wasn't. That was 2005.
Well, actually, that was.
You're right, I'm totally off.
It was a good thing for the board.
I think it was around December 10th.
No, it's a good thing.
Does that ring a bell?
December 2010, there was a big event.
I won't forget it. I think back to the 10th.
Oh, that was when the
Mary,
We got your backyard.
Alicia, that's right. That's when Randall Ishii and I were standing out in the middle of Stadium Way, and he was telling me he'd send me to a hotel if I needed it. And I was like, I got too many kids in there. I'm not going to a hotel.
so that was a good thing that happened, because it got you on.
Yeah, there's no question.
Let's see what else.
SSOs this month?
What's that?
SSOs this month?
Oh, there was one overflow?
And oh, I'm sorry. There was, I was speaking to you last Friday,
Yes, we had
and
two
you
voids
called
and
in
no
on
SSO.
San Samo, but when I got there later that night, there was nobody there.
Yes, it was a coincidence. We had a surcharge line, we're some contractor, we don't know who, left a 4-inch piece of HDPE, about 18 inches long, and it got lodged in a 6-inch pipe. Thank God we had a bypass, so the sewage backed up and went down a different system. Otherwise, we would have a real big problem. And then all the odor complaints, we think it was probably a dead animal and strong rain. But I'm glad Sean Condry called us to get out there, and we had everything out.
Good. So when I heard you on the phone, you were saying we might be here all night, and so I went to work, and you weren't, and I was happy about that.
We were too.
That was not an SSO though. Where was the SSO?
From last month, it was on Elm Street. It's the one, we had a sewer line that was straight through a storm culvert, which is not good. And it wasn't actually a backup, it was leaking out of the bottom joints. So that was a very, very long period of it. But we did good.
I got a couple of comments. What's the structural grading system in grade 54321? A little bit. You have to tell me now. It was on page 26, I think.
So that's the master PACP, it's this industry standard that based on what the defect looks like, that code at that clock position means this. So the grade 5 structural is, it is failing or it will fail within 5 years, if you want to talk about it sort of generally. And then a grade 4 is, 5 to 10 years.
Oh, I see. 5 is the worst. Remember we did that for the the definition of the overflows. I think it'd be a good idea to put the
Okay.
definitions in there. That's one. And then two, on our grant, on our lateral program, remember we asked at the finance committee, does this include the amount of pipe that, people repair their laterals but don't get a grant or loan?
It's on page 30, on the inspection
30.
section on page 30, that's the total length that was replaced.
Lateral inspections. Work orders.
Feet of lateral replaced, 46,340.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay, but that's not just from our,
That's including the grant and the normal.
Right, so
if you
that-
go to the grant, the next couple pages.
Because the next one says the lateral grant replacement program, so,
Yeah.
yeah. So
That's 17 some thousand.
and so that is, when you talk, this is 17, so this is
this is
a
just one
large
year.
amount of, a good percentage of the laterals got replaced.
Well,
Wait a
it's
minute,
no, it's
this
a
is-
small percentage, it's only 4%.
There, you can see it right here,
Okay.
in the next page, 31, it's really jumping up. The number of miles replaced is going up, up, up.
Well, it's not going good in.
No, but it's going up steeper.
Oh, okay. It's accelerating.
Wait a minute, but on page 30, on page 31, you talk about
Total.
21.1 miles on the lateral grant, but this is a year-end report. How much is the total lateral replacement represent?
Since, in this year, it's on the previous page, it's about 8.8 miles, 46,000 feet of lateral
Right,
this
what
year.
about, because this one says over the last 9 years, what about over the last, what's your best guess over the last 10 years?
Do we have that number, It would be really high.
We
The
can
downside of
get
giving
it.
us some good numbers.
There are 4 different data sources that we have to combine
Well,
to get
even-
that number, or you can get that. from
Even if
the
you
internet.
do it,
No, we didn't
the
get there.
last 4 years, the last 3 years, that'd be fine.
But they have this whole new computer system, right? This whole new data system for tracking this stuff. So
Once the laterals are replaced, they're gonna last a long
they're gonna have
time.
to go back to paper cards.
I don't want to do that.
No, I don't want to go back to paper cards. Oh, no. Forget about that. But I'd like you to go back electronically as far as you can, because I think that's interesting for us to know for the water board and for when we move projects around. We can say, look, we've replaced, this says 21.1 miles. We replaced 60 miles. We have 200 miles of laterals. We replaced 60 miles of it in the last X years.
Exactly.
And yeah, we're currently actually going through somebody's administrative resources helping us to go through a lot of our cars and capture like, so
We are going back to
Yeah, I don't
we're
wanna ask
making
you to do-
progress and she's going back through time, so we'll get.
How far back have
But
the
we
cards
have-
now gone through?
How far back is?
How far where do the cards end and the electronics begin right now?
The, no, so we started collecting the inspections records. We didn't have a full 16-17. So the inspections started being an Infonet in fiscal year 16-17,
So
but it
maybe-
wasn't complete.
That's okay. Just 16, 17 or something.
But also pay attention to the fact, we passed the ordinance in 13-14. That's what was the accelerator of all of this.
Mhm.
Right.
People had they had no mandate to replace their laterals until we replaced the ordinance. So we were giving away loans or grants, but it didn't matter until we passed the ordinance, I would say, right here. That's where it starts to go up.
Yeah, if you do total, there'll be a line up here for total, because these are
Okay,
just part
right,
of
yeah.
our program.
Yeah.
And we might as well take credit for all that.
Oh, I imagine it would be even steeper, right? Because people are replacing them without getting grants.
That's what we're talking about.
Okay.
Yeah,
And
you get
actually,
it.
now, and that's, this reminds me, I got a call from Marin Catholic a couple weeks ago, and all I did was say, call Felicia and say, you want a waiver of the time frame because it's a school. And I never heard another word, so I guess that works out. So, you know,
He said he was gonna call you back.
and it was fine that he did. Honestly, I said, if this doesn't work,
Right.
call me.
I'm sorry.
So Marin Catholic's replacing, it triggered the lateral ordinance.
Yes, it did.
Okay.
And they have a lot of laterals.
I should have asked this at the beginning of the report outs, but let me ask you this. I can't remember the name of the woman. This is very strange. Somebody came into my office and was speaking to my receptionist.
Oh, yeah.
And she
you
said,
talked to her.
she said, is this Ross Valley Sanitary District?
Yeah, that was.
My car navigation is telling me it's here, and my receptionist said, no, but we have a board member here, so I went better. She was coming because she's been required to move her ejector from inside the house to outside the house.
Yeah.
She's like, I'm a nurse, it's 40 grand.
Isn't though.
It's not, it wasn't that much. But in any case, I saw her phone too.
You did.
Thank you.
What was her name again?
I just got an email, 334 Oak
Yeah.
Street, and her name is...
So you put the RVSD number on your Google something.
No, navigation said she was at 25
Yeah.
Kerner, whatever this address was. Navigation said she was walking around the complex and we had a nice receptionist, so she talked to our person, she was knocking on all sorts of doors.
You know, Mike, another thing to point out here is the repair activities, which have really ramped up.
Yeah. 25.
It's 25. So, this is all,
Oh, do you do? Okay, great.
This is on the website, yes? Or will be?
Part of the agenda, we're gonna add it as a link,
Okay.
separate it out, absolutely.
Does NV5 know about this to our PR people?
Know about?
This report and,
Oh.
I don't
No,
know.
we can put it on the website.
Yeah, I imagine it would be.
Yeah.
Perhaps when it's accepted.
Accepted, we love it.
That was great.
we're gonna gush over it.
You love the report.
Considerations, great. Does that work?
Accept just doesn't express the feelings of the report.
If I could make just one more point of information to the board, you know, I think Catherine and Stephen put an extraordinary amount of work into producing this document. I really want to recognize them for all of their work, not just on this one report, but all of the monthly reports that they prepared that fed into this report.
Thank you.
As well as, you know, Patrick Filippelli, who I think provides them a great deal of support, in particular with the story mapping that you see, which I think is, you know, a really fun way of looking at data. And additionally, you know, and it is mentioned several times throughout the report that, you know, this is a really strong cross-departmental effort, you know, not just Catherine working in the engineering department and Stephen working in the operations department, but all of the people who work underneath them. And each and every one of the divisions that report to these two managers are represented in this annual report. And I'd like to recognize all of them. The pump station supervisor, Noel Sandoval, the line maintenance supervisor, Rafael Zarco, the repair supervisor, Manny Vigil, the inspection superintendent, Dennis Gavalos, the condition assessment supervisor, John Vogel. All of these gentlemen, and under the leadership of these two, made this report and the results in this report possible. And I think one of the things that Steve said when the board appointed him back in October is it's, you know, the district is all about the pipes and the pumps and the people. And that's, I thought, was a really elegant way of capturing what we do here at the district. We're a service business.
Right.
We provide service, and this is a fantastic report demonstrating the services that the district provides.
Yeah, and I mean, we recognize that this takes a lot of time, and this probably doesn't actually feel like your job. Like there's your job, and then this is telling everybody about how you're doing your job, but it is, you know, it's vital, right? Like, we could be doing a job, but if the public doesn't know, then we can't get the rate increases that we need and the public support, so yeah.
So the report's fabulous, but the work that they're behind is what's really cool.
Well, and I think, as Steve said, the results.
Right, the results.
The results. These are great results.
Okay, any more comments?
I would.
So can I recommend you embrace the report?
Oh, we put it on a pedestal.
I move that we accept and embrace the fiscal year 2018.
Second.
Thank you, staff. All in favor?
Aye.
Now the monthly.
Is this when we have a group hug?
No.
Virtual.
So I guess we're gonna have to get a pedestal. That wasn't part of the motion.
Here's the 42 I saw, but it's the 1 month.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because this was the monthly.
Yeah, this is the month. So
Yeah, and that was, you know, it's kind of, it's only 2%, but, you know, it went 51, 49, 45, 42, and I remember looking at this in August going, oh, that's great, if we could just keep that going down, but it only went up to a percentage. It went from 51 to 44, you know, and I think we're going in the right direction. And that'll make a fundamental change in the CMSA, because we'll have normal representation, because we get down to 40% of flow,
Right.
it's all good.
That's what's possible when it's not raining.
Right. Well, again, with all the work we've done in the last year, we may see in the rain that we don't have a repeat of last year's rain days as much as we have in the past, so, you know.
We'll know over
Yep.
time.
Yep.
Yeah, I think there was a cautionary note about our projects, and there's a technical issue that if you change the elevation where the infiltration happens, then it will go up, and then it goes to the next defect in the system.
Yeah.
So there's a transfer of I&I, so it's not a straight up one-for-one reduction.
Exactly.
So the lateral that's next to it can be an issue, and so it takes a real repeated, iterative attention to these systems to reach the ideal.
And that's why the lateral program and the lateral grant program are a vital part of this, because we can fix our pipes, but if the other pipes aren't getting replaced and repaired, then, you know, we're really.
And they're kind of at the end of the line too. Laterals are at the end of the line, so it doesn't transfer necessarily.
Yeah, no, not necessarily. Each system unique has its own character.
Okay, and then the monthly capital program is 16B. And we talked about that. And we'll see more.
And by the way, I just point, the legal is not in this month because we changed the dates. It's not that we decided to change
Our
it.
building department.
You're not billing us anymore.
I thought somebody made an executive decision that we look at unbelievable report, but that was okay.
No, it didn't
All
happen.
right.
Okay, no more.
You don't have to move.
I shall-